people. See, Colleen is joining us. Right on time. Hi, Colleen.
Hi, good night, everyone.
Okay, so now I'm going to start. I see that we have 93 participants. So welcome everyone to the Transportation Committee of Community Board 4 in September 2022. As you can see, we're still on Zoom, and by executive order of the governor, we do not know what will happen next month. Things are in flux, but we'll let you know. We have a very big agenda. And before we start, I'd like to introduce the members of the committee and start with the co-chair, Dale Corvino.
Hi, everyone. Dale Corvino, co-chair.
Right. Then Gwen Billig, okay. David Warren. See that? Perfect. Tina.
Hi, everyone.
Nelson. Tina Nelson.
Hi there.
Okay. Janine Pretante Yusuf, who's our, she does everything. I mean, you know, we're doing nothing. She is supporting us at the board. Alan Oster.
Good evening, Chelsea resident.
Brett Furfer. Okay, Charlie Todd.
Good evening, all.
Okay, Blake Kurisu.
Hi, good evening.
Hey, Carl Wilson.
Hello, good evening.
And Dorothy Daly. Are you on the committee?
No, Christine, Dorothy's with the MTA's project.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, you don't have the name. She's trying to make believe she's part of the committee, the community. I love it. Okay. All right, so what is Luminita Marines? Oh, MTA.
She's also,
okay.
yeah, she's
All right.
also with us.
So we have a very long agenda, but the first two items are with the MTA. And in fact, the first item, which is about the Quill depot, is really within the committee to ask a bunch of questions, and we're going to generate a letter to go to the MTA. So we don't expect MTA to give us any answers at this point, because I know they are not ready for it, and we would rather give them the questions. So my understanding is that the Quill depot, you all know the Quill depot is on the west side, the far west side, between 11 and 12. And between 40 and 41st Street, it has a lot of 5 floors of MTA buses, which go in and out every day to service the whole borough. And apparently the last floor, and here's Jesse Greenwald for transportation. The last floor, the top floor, needs to have major repairs, structural repairs. And the MTA is looking for location to park the buses while that's happened. So I wanted to consult the rest of the transportation committee about what kind of question we should ask the MTA to look at for us before they come back to us.
And Christine, I just want to say, I mean, there is some, if you have questions, I may be able to answer some questions for you. So feel free to toss them out, and if I can answer, I will.
Okay. Don't want to ambush you here.
Yeah, no worries.
So let me tell you my questions. I have questions. The questions are you going to put them on the street? And on which street is that the case? Are you intending to put them in other locations? If you do, could some of those relocation be permanent? And then, because as you know, we have a large number of your buses making a left turn at 42nd Street, which has been very dangerous. And the final question is, will you equip that floor of charging stations so that since you are rebuilding, we can have that floor electrified for buses to recharge? So these are the questions I have.
So I can answer some of those. Just let me give you some background on the project because we haven't spoken at the board about this yet. So we have a project where we are replacing the entire roof and installing a new roof system at the Quill Depot. And that's the scope in a nutshell. We have an invitation for bid that went out in August, and we're expecting bid returns at the end of September 30th. And then we're looking towards a November award date. And these are all subject to change. With a November award date would be construction sometime next year. And the whole job would take about a year. And of course, this is all contingent on the facts once they're finalized with the contractor that comes on board. Obviously, we have to relocate buses at that depot to facilitate this. And it's our goal, and internally our planners have been looking around, it's our goal to work the phasing of this plan so that we minimize how much disruption happens with our buses having to find alternative parking. But that being said, we are looking for off-site, off-depot location parking for buses. And our goal is to have them not be on the street. So to find parking lots or off-street locations for this. And I can't get into too many details about what we're looking at, but we're reviewing other depot locations, nearby parking lots, that kind of thing, so that we're not just sprawling out on the street with buses, because obviously that would be a burden on the community. So we recognize that. We're trying to minimize that as much as possible. And
Okay.
I don't know, and I don't have an answer about any kind of electrical, like making this an electrical charging bus depot or anything like that. But that's the
I think that would be a good thing to bring up. But Dale.
Yeah, just a couple of quick follow-ups. Is the need to relocate the buses the entire capacity of the depot, or is
No.
it like one floor?
Right.
I don't know if it's one floor, but like we're working with a number, and of course, all subject to change. We're working with a number that's closer to around 50 buses.
Okay. And then does the roof replacement have any like green components to it, or is it strictly a structural replacement?
I think it's just a structural replacement of the roof.
I mean, it kind of begs the question, like, while you're at it.
Sure. I don't have an answer for you on that.
Okay.
It's not in the scope as I understand it.
And then I have a follow-up question, which is I don't know whether that work is going to be noisy, because you have a lot of residential building right next door. So if you are doing it, we would want to have a lot of noise abatement.
Sure.
So that the building next door doesn't. How long the job is going to last?
We're looking at, we think, about a year.
Yeah.
So if construction starts next year, maybe the first or second quarter next year, about a year from that. So.
And it would be during the day, not at night, right?
Yeah, so we would be looking at your typical MTA construction hours, like a 7 to 7. This is all stuff we have to finalize with the contractor, and when we have the final plans and everything. But obviously,
Right.
we would
So
want to
noise mitigation is going to be really, really critical.
Yeah, we agree. So once we have a plan in place on that, it's something we would build into the contract and work with the contractor on. Probably a 7 a.m., 7 p.m. time frame is usually what's allowed, and we'll have more details on that to share.
Okay. So I'd like to ask the committee if it's okay that we send a letter, and we could send an administrative letter. We don't have to vote for that. What do you think, Dale?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Just outlining the concerns that we've raised here.
Questions and the concern, right?
And if anybody on the committee wants to throw in on any other additional concerns for this project.
Okay, so we'll move to item number 2, which is what everybody's. Viren, your hand is up.
Yeah, just one quick thing. You talked about noise mitigation. Probably we should throw in, since they're not looking at electrical sort of charging stations and sort of changing the fleet, maybe we should throw in, not throw in, but request for pollution mitigation of some sort while they're at it, because there's kind of a bunch of money being spent, and that might not be a bad ask.
Like an air filtration system?
So there are a whole lot of technologies available now as we speak, starting with sort of plant life to sort of much more involved and extensive remediation.
Viren, would
So,
you mind?
Viren, you can
would you
send
mind
us the,
Yeah. Would
You
you mind
can-
sending us a little language on that so we can incorporate it?
We'll certainly do.
Thanks.
Very good. All right, so we are going to get into the second session, which concerned the West 28th Street substation, a proposed substation at West 28th Street. There has been a lot of discussions about that. We have a lot of people here. So the first step of that is going to have Eric Butcher. Janine, can you bring Eric first? Eric, as our council member, has a very intense schedule today, and he would like to address everyone before.
Okay, he's coming over.
Okay. Here is Eric.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much, Christine. Really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks to the committee. I want to thank the MTA for being here, although I have to say I'm not happy with this location, and this is not a new issue. As most people know, we went through this a few years ago when this location was proposed, and when I worked for Speaker Johnson, we got the MTA to consider other sites, and now they're back at this site, and I don't feel that we've gotten an adequate explanation about why the other sites won't work. So tonight, I really want the MTA to get into more detail. I want to hear from the members of the community, and really looking forward to straightforward answers to their questions. Apparently like 200 people signed up to speak tonight. This forum, the Community Board Forum, is a much better forum to get the answers to our questions. So really appreciate this opportunity to really get to the bottom of this. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Council Member. So the way we're going to do that is a quick presentation by the MTA, because I think a lot of people have seen that presentation already, so let's not spend too much time on it. And then we'll have the chair of Penn South Board, Amber, to speak first. Then we'll have questions from the committee, and then we'll open it to the whole public and try to organize how to do it so it doesn't take us until 3 o'clock in the morning. So I want to turn it to you, the MTA, and introduce your team, and then let's go from there.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Christine and board members, for having us. My name is Luke DePalma. I'm the Senior Director of Government and Community Relations for New York City Transit. Ernest Matarelli is on my team, and he represents the MTA to your district and the west side of Manhattan. So before I pass it to Joe O'Donnell, who can introduce his team on construction and development, I just want to briefly speak and introduce this project and why we're here. So we're here to discuss the MTA's plan to construct an electrical power substation on West 28th Street between 8th and 9th Avenues, as you know. This substation is critical to providing more reliable power and service to the existing 8th Avenue subway line. New York City Transit will require more power to serve a new signal system called communications-based train control that we are installing along 8th Avenue to allow for more frequent AC and E train service. This presentation that we're going to give tonight is the same one that we gave last week on September 13th during a special community meeting we held on Zoom. During last week's presentation, we had over 400 participants and received hundreds of comments and questions. Most questions fell into categories concerning construction impacts, noise, air quality, and dust, roadway impacts and traffic, as well as the long-term health effects of the substation itself on nearby residents once put into service. We want to thank everyone that participated in last week's meeting and assure you that during the meeting, we attempted to answer as many questions as time would allow. Questions that remained unanswered were recorded, and it's our plan to address many tonight, as well as on a dedicated webpage that we will launch for this project in the coming days. This webpage will be a repository for project-related information and will feature answers to the most frequently asked questions from the community. Just for additional background for this board's sake and everybody attending, we initially began our outreach on this project in 2018 when the current site was our preferred location. We were asked at that time by local elected officials to investigate alternative locations. As a result, we reviewed approximately 30 different sites, but none of them met the criteria as completely as the location we have returned to on 28th Street. Now, we understand fully, we've heard you loud and clear. We understand fully that the residents of the adjoining co-op Penn South object to this location. However, we've returned to it to construct this substation, as we will get into in the presentation, because it's the best possible location for it. In December 2021, once we determined we were returning to our original site on 28th Street, we briefed elected officials and some of Penn South's management and board leadership. We then briefed the full Penn South Board of Directors at a board meeting in February 2022, had a walkthrough of the site on 28th Street in April with elected officials and staff, as well as reps from Penn South and CB4. And we provided a brief update in June to CB4. We held last week's September meeting and are now here again for an in-depth conversation at the committee in CB4. Between these points of outreach, we kept the dialogue open with local stakeholders, including Penn South's leadership. I want to clarify that at every point in the outreach process, Penn South's board and local officials expressed objections and concerns about our selection of this site. However, to reiterate, we chose it despite the opposition because it's the best possible location. As we will get into during the presentation and have stated previously, we will work to ensure that we are mitigating all construction impacts while building this structure to the best of our ability. We plan to keep the community and stakeholders fully informed as work continues. The substation itself, once activated, will pose no environmental hazard to the community. And again, we are building it here underground because it's the best site for it. So after the June meeting with CB4, the community board sent us a resolution containing items that they wanted us to address, and we look forward to discussing these today. And so with that, I'm going to pass it to Joe O'Donnell to introduce his team and bring up the PowerPoint.
Thanks, Luke, and thank you, Christine, Dale, and the entire Community Board for Transportation Committee. Appreciate you all having us again here tonight. You know, Christine, we do have a deck that's prepared. It's the same one that we went through with the community at large, Penn South community at large on earlier in September. So I know for the sake of time, I'm not going to belabor, but I do think it's important to go through the entire deck so that we are going to be touching on a lot of the questions and concerns that folks have already asked. And if you do have questions or concerns afterwards, obviously we're here to hear those questions and concerns. But I think a lot of them are answered here if, you know, if we're willing to receive the information. Some of the answers may not be what everybody wants to hear, but they are the answers. So if we hang on a second here, I'm going to share my screen. Oh, actually, before I share the screen, let me just go around the horn real quick and let you know that we are joined here tonight by some of our senior leadership from our infrastructure group, who is the group that will be executing the substation project and projects like that. We have Dana Hecht, who is the business unit lead for our infrastructure group. We also have Bob Laga. From the project team specifically, we have, as I look around the horn here, we have Jimmy Anthony and Lucy Gladowski from the design team. I see a couple more Luke, or at least one more Luke de Palma, so I'm not sure who that is, who signed in from the MTA team from Luke. So that might be some of the folks from our environmental team, because I see Luminita, who's with our design team, environmental team. So that may be Dorothy Daly. Sorry.
Dorothy.
Oh, no. Oh, she's,
No,
she's,
yeah, maybe Patrick.
oh, Patrick possibly. Okay. So with no further ado, I may have missed a couple of folks because there's a couple of pages here of presenters. So apologize if I missed anybody, but we do have a treasure trove of subject matter experts here to answer questions when we get through this. And let me see, do I have the ability to share my screen?
Yep.
Can everybody see that? Okay,
Yes.
fantastic. So I am just going to swap screens here. Okay, so we have full screen mode here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. So just to briefly run through again, I know Luke touched on some of this, reiterate the project's description and goals. The objective here is to construct an underground power substation at 8th Avenue, west of 8th Avenue on West 28th Street. The project's objective is to provide additional power capacity to not only provide a quality and reliable power supply for the existing 8th Avenue service, but also for a future increase in the number of trains per hour that will be realized as a benefit from communications-based train controller, CBTC. That's currently being installed on the 8th Avenue line between 59th Street and High Street in Brooklyn. So the overarching objectives of this project, to be short, are to upgrade the power and the quality of power that the 8th Avenue line is currently be receiving so that it has more reliable service. And then we're building for the future to accommodate CBTC. This project is being advanced through an A+B procurement method. This not only considers schedule, but cost to optimize and shorten the construction duration. Not only is that better from the MTA standpoint because shorter durations, time means money, but also fewer and less impacts to the surrounding community because we get in and out of there quicker. The estimated total construction cost for this project is $80 million. The overall construction duration is anticipated to be 39 months. Approximately 24 months of that is at the street level. The rest would be below ground once we get the box constructed for the substation to outfit the substation and do punch list items below ground. So there'd be less impact at the street level. What is a traction power substation? It basically takes AC power from Con Edison and steps it down in voltage that can be handled by the transit system in order to power subway trains with enough power to function. We have approximately 23 substations throughout all 5 boroughs, and that's an important fact to remember because this is not something new. This is something that we have utilized for the entirety of the New York City transit system. These 230 substations are in residential and commercial areas all over the city. We have located these over the history of this subway system, which is over 100 years old, and to no great fanfare outside of obviously, I'm not going to sugarcoat things. There is some pain involved with the construction. We're going to have to excavate and build here. So along with that comes some impacts to the surrounding community. But once this project is complete, aside for some gradings on the sidewalk level, which we'll show some renderings of in the future slides, there will be no evidence at the street level of this substation. The substation needs to be located. One of the things that was very integral into the location of this substation is it needs to be in close proximity to the existing system. Ideally, that would be 300 feet or less from existing subway tracks to minimize the distance from the transformer to the third rail power distribution system. Further than that, you start to talk about degradation of power. Longer distances means reduced quality of the power that is being transmitted, and that means additional manholes, more excavations, and more disruptions to the public. So the vast majority of the boxes that we checked or that this location checks are not only achieving the objectives of this project to be able to produce quality power for the existing and future system, but also to minimize impacts on the surrounding community. This what you see here is the location of a subsurface power substation, and you would not know from the street level view here that there was anything here. There are some gradings to the right and to the left of the street here. that show us or tell us, because we built it, we know where they are, where the substation is, but passersby and the public at large wouldn't even know that this substation exists below ground. To give you a sense of where that actual substation is located underneath Maspeth or in Maspeth, this green box is an outline of the actual footprint underneath the street here that shows where the substation is located. Again, identifiable by these gratings and the access hatch on the sidewalk. And that's all at this point. What is inside the substation? Well, I mentioned that we need to step down power from the way that Con Edison distributes it to power that is acceptable into the New York City transit system in order to power the trains. So we need to reduce that power to a level that is acceptable by the system. So there are rectifiers and transformers. This equipment is approximately 8 feet by 15 feet. There's a gentleman in the background there for size and scale to give you a sense of the equipment that are in there. You know, a DC power rectifier converts alternating current or AC current to the direct current that is required by the New York City transit system. So that's what the equipment inside this substation is doing. When we looked to locate this substation, when we first came to not only the community, but the community board and the Penn South community back in 2018, as Luke mentioned, we had identified West 28th Street as the ideal substation location for us because it is approximately the halfway point between existing substations within the system. So you see in Burgundy, the existing 53rd Street substation and the existing Greenwich substation. They're approximately a mile away from the West 28th Street substation, and the overall distance is 2.2 miles. So it almost ideally halves that location or that distance in order to make the best quality power connection. We also, on the map, you can see have a planned substation at Canal Street, which is further south in Manhattan. This location meets the power connection criteria that I previously discussed for a traction power substation in being within 300 feet of the location that we need to connect to. It has sufficient street width here. This is a very wide block between the Penn South buildings on West 28th Street. There are no buildings mid-block where the substation is actually going to be constructed. There is some Penn South open space to the north there, but we do not impact this space. This project will be constructed entirely in the New York City Transit or New York City Department of Transportation right-of-way. So New York City DOT's right-of-way, the sidewalks and the street. There are minimal subsurface utility issues here because of the width of the street. It's set back from the Penn South residential buildings. And because of the fact that it's entirely within the right-of-way, the DOT right-of-way, there are no temporary or permanent easements. We don't need to attain anybody's property. We are not impacting anyone's property, including the Penn South open spaces. So as Luke mentioned, when this first was proposed, there was a lot of opposition to the location. Elected officials, Penn South, implored us to go back to the drawing board, take another look. Where else could this be sited? We took a look at 30 alternative locations around the city, along the 8th Avenue line. And West 28th Street was determined still after that thorough investigation to be the most feasible location. 27th Street, 28th Street, both east and west of 8th Avenue, and 31st Street were other potential locations that were ultimately eliminated due to physical construction complaints and not meeting the overall objectives of the project. I'll talk a little bit about each of those locations and why they didn't work. So 27th Street, factors that were considered here, if you can see on my screen, the red area that is hashed out by the red dashes. This would be the location of the substation. Because of the narrow streets here, it would have to be longer and impact a larger swath of 27th Street. There are numerous commercial buildings and SUNY FIT, which require public access. We are required for our projects to maintain building entrance and egress. This would have been difficult, if not impossible in some cases to do because of the narrow nature of the street here and the amount of work that would need to be done. This would eliminate virtually all of the existing parking on this block during construction. There were significant challenges, I mentioned, to maintaining entrance and egress. The construction staging area would block existing ventilation gratings, and the excavation for the substation could cause, again, because of the proximity and the relatively narrow nature here of the street, because of the proximity to the buildings, there was a good chance that there would be lateral movement of adjacent buildings. And what that would mean is we would be required to go in, shore up those buildings, and stabilize those buildings so that they could withstand any sort of construction that was going on adjacent to them, or if in the event that we got into the midst of construction and we saw significant impacts to these buildings, then we would have to go in and remediate after the fact. Between 27th and 28th Street on 8th Avenue, we considered possibly siting this location underneath the FIT academic buildings. Factors here were the consideration of the new FIT academic building that was already planned at that time and is currently under construction. So to integrate into that existing footprint would have been exceedingly difficult to incorporate into, again, another situation here where we have an extremely narrow street. Entry and egress would have been virtually impossible to maintain at all times because of the narrow nature. Anybody who lives in the area already is aware that there is considerable amount of construction on the block, which greatly impacts the ability to traverse that block, both from a vehicular and pedestrian standpoint. And then West 28th Street, east of 8th Avenue, some of the factors that were considered here were the close proximity to Dubinsky Student Center, again, narrow street width, concurrent to the ongoing 23-story L&M building construction, and the FIT academic building construction that I previously mentioned. I'll get to it in a moment when we talk about why, when we get to ultimately why, again, West 28th was ideal. But again, the narrow natures of the streets here, trying to do the work that needed to be done in this confined environment and maintaining access, entry, and egress to these buildings, commercial establishments, residential establishments, would have been exceedingly difficult given the fact of the narrow nature, if not impossible in some instances, as I mentioned, not something that we need to contend with on the West 28th Street block because of the distance the substation is from all surrounding buildings. One of the locations that may have worked, or we thought possibly had the opportunity to work best, was incorporating it into some of the Penn Station development that will be going on in the future. So we considered 31st Street. A substation was proposed in the area of Penn Station area civic and land use improvement project. In 2019, the MTA NYC team surveyed the Amtrak Moynihan Station area. They found one possible spot that was proposed and located in Yard E. That substation would have had to be built below 31st Street, under the newly built pedestrian plaza, adjacent to Amtrak's new fan chamber, and above Amtrak's active tracks. So that's not anybody else's problem. That would have been our issue to contend with. But overall, because of the size of the substation that would have been able to be fit into this location, there would have been access restrictions, and it would not have achieved the objectives of the project, which is to increase power to the 8th Avenue line, not only for the existing service, but for future service. In short, West 28th Street was the ideal location. That's why we found ourselves back here. There's sufficient street width, no buildings in close proximity mid-block. It's going to experience the least amount of subsurface utilities, and it's set back from the residential buildings. And again, there would be no temporary or permanent easements. The rest of the presentation goes into how it will be constructed, and some of the mitigation measures that we will employ to mitigate against any construction impacts as a result of this project. But I know that Christine, we're pressed for time and you want to get to Q&A. So in short, here we are at the end of the project. Again, this is a rendering of what things will look like post-construction. On the left-hand side of the screen, you have a blue box that shows where the substation will be located underneath the street and sidewalk. And on the right side of the screen, you show the reconstructed street and sidewalk with no visible evidence of the substation being located below, other than the grading that we showed in the Mathis photo. So with that, Christine, I guess why don't we turn it back over to you and the committee for your Q&A.
Yeah, you want to close the presentation so we can see everybody?
Sure. Hang on one second. Let me stop sharing.
Yeah. And Janine, Senator Oilman is in the public and we'd like to give him a chance to speak right now.
Okay, will do. Is he on with a phone number? Do you know?
I am not aware of that.
Let me see. Yeah, I'm not seeing him.
You don't see him?
No.
Okay, let me find out. Somebody just sent me an email. No, Vasquez. Okay. Oh, his hand is raised.
Oh, there's 5 raised. I'm not sure.
Brad Oilman, you should.
Nope, it's not coming up. Seeing Holly, Ruth, Sam, Amy.
No, here it is.
Do you see him?
No, your hand is raised.
Is he under somebody else's name, maybe? Oh, could it be? Let me see.
I see Sean.
Oh, maybe Sam. It's under Sam Vasquez. Let me bring him over.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you.
There
Sorry,
you are.
sorry.
You were incognito.
How is it under Sam Vasquez? That is very strange, but Sam is here as part of this. Again, I wanted to thank Sam and thank you for the presentation, Joseph. Thank you, Christine. I just wanted to say a couple of things. One is, we've been pushing back on this location, and I hope everyone knows, since 2018, which, putting aside the technical difficulties, which Joseph, you went through, we just feel that this location, doesn't, we heard a lot of why this location is, according to you, the best, but what you failed to mention are all the downsides to the location, the proximity to our neighbors, the open space, the fact that there's going to be dust and other concerns, and the fact that there's a large senior population in the middle of a residential area. I find it hard to believe that the middle of a residential complex is good on any level for a substation. And I did want to also add that back in 2018, I remember your presentation then. I don't recall 31st Street and the new Penn Station development as being considered at that juncture. I'm glad to know about that option now. I would like to follow up on that to understand why, again, you have not chosen that, since there will be so much construction near that site. You say that the power would not be sufficient because of the distance, but I'd like to understand that more at a certain time to understand why that location didn't move up on the list. But I'd also like to say that we as a community are obviously concerned about what the long-term and then the near-term impact of this project is going to be. So we're going to continue to press the MTA for answers as to why this location was chosen above our objections and the objections of our constituents. So I want folks to know that in our mind, we have more work to do as to determining this location. And in our mind, it's not settled. I'll also add that this is not my first substation rodeo. As your state senator, we had 2 other substations, one that was noted on the map at Greenwich Avenue, which was not adjacent or in the middle of a residential complex, I should add. The other that was on 13th Street, I believe, between 5th and 6th, which was in the middle of a busy street and adjacent to residences. I was chair of Community Board 2 when that issue first arose. Everything is fine now on 12th or 13th Street and Greenwich Avenue, but I will say that there was an equal amount of consternation as to these location decisions at that time too. But thank you to the MTA for providing us these, the specifics of this. As your elected official, I'm not happy. As a community board, I'm sure you're not either. And as local residents, you have reasons to be concerned and reasons to question this location, especially since the others were not adjacent to residences. So thank you very much, Christine. I'll continue to listen to this tonight.
Thank you, Senator Holman. So what we are going to do now is promote Amber Nicosia, who is the chair of Penn South Redevelopment Cooperative, so that she can speak to the position and kind of represent everyone and the major concerns they have. Janine, can you promote Amber?
Yep, she's over. Amber, can you hear us?
Where is she? Oh, here she is. Here is
Hi, good evening. Good evening. Good evening to everyone, and thank you to the committee. My name is Amber Nicosia. I'm the president at Penn South. We are an affordable, limited equity housing cooperative, and we're home to nearly 5,000 residents within the Chelsea community. We were built in 1962, and the Penn South community is a naturally occurring retirement community, and we're home to a large number of seniors within Chelsea. I'm here this evening regarding the MTA's proposal to build an enormous electrical substation on 28th Street. This is in the middle of our residential property, and we think it's simply an unacceptable location. The Penn South Board of Directors and the residents are firmly opposed to this site. Directly impacted by the proposed substation are important social and medical facilities that have not been addressed. We have the United Cerebral Palsy 24-hour residential home, the Church of the Holy Apostle, which feeds and provides services to thousands of people every day. It is the largest soup kitchen in Manhattan. We have 2 accessorized stops on this block. We have the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, which provides medical care and advocacy for people living with HIV and AIDS. The local chapter for Alcoholics Anonymous is here, and 3 additional medical care providers. In addition, we have our local youth center, which supports children in the community ages 6 to 18. To be clear, this is not simply a matter of commercial tenants being inconvenienced. These businesses provide unique and vital care within the Chelsea community. The MTA originally approached Penn South about this project going back from 2018. At that time, the New York City Speaker, Corey Johnson, said, "This is the worst possible location for a project of this size." He was talking about the impact, not only on the residents, but the unique care facilities that were located on this block. They are still there. The engineers for the MTA have determined that 28th Street is the simplest option for their project. And despite renewed efforts by our local officials, by our senator, the MTA is refusing to budge. Their MTA engineers told us that this was the best site for the MTA. There's been little information collected about the residents and businesses that surround this particular site. We've heard much more about the residents and businesses on the locations that were decided not to be one of the areas that they were including, and less about the area that they have included as a site location. It's very, very disturbing for us. The MTA has estimated that this project will take over 3 years and take place 6 days a week. They've admitted that they won't know what the full impact will be on the proposed construction until they break ground. Again, this is causing us great concern. An example of this recently was the MTA warned that there might be disruption to electrical and water services to our residents during the project. This might be an inconvenience in most neighborhoods, but when you have a high senior population, this could potentially be dangerous. We're concerned about the noise, the air pollution, the health, the environmental issues of construction. Not to mention, with buildings that went up in 1962, we are concerned about the infrastructure issues that could be related to a project of this size. We're also concerned about what might happen afterwards. We've heard from other people who live near locations about ventilation noise, about concerns about EMFs, and issues that they've had with substations where there have been both fires and explosions. At this point, I'd like to just point out some of the irony of the presentation earlier as they're talking about building this to help support substation power. Originally in the presentation they gave to us, they talked about giving more power to elevators, not in the neighborhood, 23rd Street, but to elevators located outside of the community, too far for the impacted residents to be able to access if they have physical challenges. Tonight, we're coming here and we're asking for the following. We're requesting information that has not already been shared with Penn South about what the impact this will have on the community. We want the MTA to provide the MTA board approval, the environmental impact analysis, full disclosure on alternative sites, including the details of why they were rejected, and a detailed plan on how to mitigate noise and pollution here in this residential community. We believe the MTA needs to conduct a full analysis of the community impact before settling on this location. The MTA should fund technical assistance that would be required by us, Penn South, to fully participate in a review. The Penn South board is not in a position to evaluate complicated construction projects, and we shouldn't be asked to be the contact for issues and complaints going forward. The MTA needs to commit to cover from the loss of income and additional expenses resulting from the proposed construction impact to our businesses. Income raised from our community facility goes to fund programs that are vital to our residents, including our dementia daycare program and in-home care services to our seniors. If this substation is built at this location, it's going to impact a larger number of people far beyond 28th Street. I'd like to finish by thanking Community Board for giving Penn South an opportunity to voice our concerns. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you, Amber. This is very helpful, obviously. So at this point, I'd like to open the floor to the member of the committee. And once we have done that and ask our questions, then we will turn it to the public, which is in the queue and has raised hands. So first, David Warren.
Hi, good evening. I have several quick questions. One is the environmental assessment, has it been done? And if it has been done, will you commit to sharing it publicly? The other thing is, a lot of the complaints also come from that I'm hearing are inconvenience to the residents of Penn South. Usually, especially if this was a private developer, there'd be some form of financial compensation. Maybe the MTA will have to give financial compensation to the board.
David, is it a question?
Yeah, I'm just asking, can the MTA consider giving a significant financial contribution to the board of Penn South, since their services and all their stuff is going to be disrupted? Because they say if this is such a good plan,
No, we
that's
got
what
it.
they'll do.
We got it.
Yes.
So,
Okay, thank you very much.
look, who is answering?
I think it's going to be by committee, frankly, depending on the nature of the question. We'll pitch it to the subject matter experts. Relative to the impacts of construction on any commercial business or retail entity, again, this substation, the planned location of this substation is in the mid-block, away from any of the Penn South buildings. The substation itself is not going to present any impacts, both from air quality to EMF to noise post-construction. During construction, there will be the associated construction-related activities, whether it be noise or vibration, which we will constantly monitor for. One of the reasons why we were out so early in our discussions with the Penn South board and management team was to be able to work with them to get as-built drawings to understand the configuration of their buildings and the conditions and location of their utilities, their foundations. So that's one of the reasons why we started speaking with them way back around this time in 2021.
So, Joe, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the answer is no, right?
What's that? What?
The question was, are you going to give financial relief? And
Yeah,
the
no.
answer, I guess,
So
is
there
no,
is
right?
no fund. There's no vehicle for financial relief.
So
What
that's
we will
called
do is
no.
if there is a commercial establishment that indicates that they're impacted by this, we can work with them to, whether it's, again, we're going to maintain entrance and egress so that their business
That's
is
not the question. The question is it yes or no?
There's no fund for that. No.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. So let's try to keep them as yes and no, and then explain just a little bit, but not too much. Okay. There were two questions, David. What was your first question?
Environmental assessment.
And will it be shared publicly? Has it been done, and will it be shared?
Yeah, we heard you. Who is answering that?
Yes, the environmental assessment has been done, and we are, as we mentioned, we are putting together a website where we will have all of the FAQs and environmental.
So when is that? I mean, can we get
When?
we get an email with that EAS tomorrow?
With the page website, we're still building it out.
I'm not talking about the
don't need a
website.
website.
I'm talking about EAS is a public document, so you could send it to us tomorrow. It's public. It's public. And EAS is public.
Or Lucy, we would just have to determine the condition and shape of that document, whether it's fit for public consumption. And
yes, we can actually deliver the report this week. I have the report. We can give it to you tomorrow. We have a lot of attachments which actually could provide some kind of technical difficulties with submitting through the email. We will have to set it up a website where we can upload so you can download.
There is a system called Dropbox, right?
Yes.
You aware of that? Okay.
Yeah. So, but the report is
that kind of resolve those issues. All right. So thank you so much, Lucy. Next is Brett.
All right, thank you. Just first, full disclosure, I happen to live in Penn South. I'm a cooperator, so and Amber did a pretty good job of talking about the issues related to Penn South itself, so I don't want to take the time to cover that. Question I have is, this isn't a new plan to build the substation. In the meantime, the state's spending what, like $7 billion or more up at Penn Station. How was the substation not linked into that, given that it's MTAs all over the place there? There's so much money. What's a few $1 million more when the ground's already opened up and there's already so much construction going on over there?
It's not open on 31st. I think I just want to interject that on 31st Street, the ground is not open, and it's not going to be open for a long time.
The point being, ground open, there's a lot of construction going on. There's a lot of investment by the state right there. It's a major capital investment.
Right.
It's just adding more money to that project to plan it and build it out. And it's got all the access and everything I would think you'd need, proximity and everything. So we're looking at something that's close to residential, in a much different context, whereas Penn Station is right up the road.
So let's get an answer on that. It's true that it's very commercial, and it could be helpful. Who is answering this one?
Yeah, do we? Well, so I did go into detail with regard to why, when we looked at the Penn redevelopment, why the substation would not work there. Forgetting all of the, somersaults and obstacles that the MTA would have to deal with just to do it because of the lack of street level access and the proximity to Amtrak's tracks, which would require a whole host of access agreements, and just in order to be able to go in and maintain our own equipment, is the fact that given the size of the footprint that is available, it would not achieve the objectives of the project. It would not increase the power level, that which is necessary to achieve the objectives of the project for the existing system or for the future build out that would be achieved by CBTC. We did look at that location.
Okay. All right. Tina.
Hi. I was pretty moved by what Amber said. She pointed out many medical needs with this population. So I'm sort of curious, was there any population study or any sort of study regarding the population done before this site was chosen?
Yeah, Lumi or Dorothy, if you'd like to talk a little bit about what the environmental analysis took a look at and the various factors that were considered and evaluated as we identified a location.
Hi, yes. I think Lumi's having some issues with her camera at the moment. I do want to step back just a quick second to touch on the environmental document. What we have is an environmental due diligence document, which meets the state seeker and city seeker requirements. It is not an EIS. An EIS would be required for federally funded projects or projects that had a much larger environmental impact. So the document did not meet that level. It's the equivalent of a categorical exclusion based on the findings. So I just wanted to clarify that. But as I mentioned, it will be made available. In the socioeconomic and in the population and in the that type of side of the environmental documentation, what's looked at is the economic, how it would affect the neighborhood, social, the specific residents themselves and the makeup of that would be something that in further coordination as the project moves forward, MTA would work with the residents to determine what some of those issues may be related to, as they mentioned, like temporary water cutoff or temporary electric or power cutoff.
Dorothy, I'm
Yes.
sorry, I'm confused. So you say it's not an EAS.
It is not an EIS. No,
And
it is
it's not an EIS. It's
correct.
Is it an EAS?
No, it's an EDDA, which is an environmental due diligence document, which is a document that was prepared to meet state seeker and city SECRA requirements due to the location and the low level of environmental impacts.
So in that document, there is no socio-economic analysis of.
No, there is a socioeconomic analysis. What there's not is a breakdown of particular residents for the co-op itself. The work is not technically impacting the buildings or the residents, the location is in the DOT street bed and on the sidewalks. So there is a study area that is 400 feet to half a mile, depending on which section, that looks at the socio and the surrounding environmental, historic, all of that. That is all included, and you'll see that in the document. But the detail of the residents makeup is not something that was included in that, because it's not part of the state process.
But the impact to the residents would be included, because the analysis zone would definitely cover.
Yes, but the specific makeup of the
It doesn't
5,000.
make the
Right.
distinction between the type of resident is what I think.
Yes,
Dorothy's getting at.
Okay.
Yes, we have age, we have income, we have
Got it.
everything that would go
And
in
so
a
what's the
standard,
what's the conclusion of that section?
that there would be no impact by the project.
Okay. All right. Carl?
Thank you. I would just like to say first, just because it's in the DOT roadbed does not mean that, it's not affecting the residents. I mean, that's pretty insane.
No, what I meant was it's a state funded project. It's not a federally funded project, and the level of direct impact to environmental resources, there's no direct impact to historic resources. Everything that was evaluated in the worst case scenario for impacts from existing, with construction, the site without having been built, and the site under construction. So we
Okay,
have
I
looked
think
at.
I think we got it, Dorothy. Just Carl, what is your
Sure. So my questions were about impact on residents, particularly around what mitigation elements are built in. And I think I may have seen a slide that we skipped over for timing purposes, but I was curious particularly about a lot of the noise and dust mitigation that will come from this, especially with those very high towers. They're going to hear that it's going to be very loud. And also the rodent mitigation that will come from digging up the road. And there is a known rat problem on 29th Street that health department is working on. So I'm just curious about that and what thought goes into mitigating that for the residents.
So there are multiple.
Okay.
Sorry, Joe, do you want to start it? And
No, I was good. I mean, I just was going to say that and then turn it over to Dorothy and Bob or whoever wanted to take it from a technical standpoint. Yes, all of those are factored into their requirements of the contract documents. The contractor is required to mitigate against dust, and there are several different layers of dust mitigation. The contractor is required to mitigate against noise. And again, there are several things that go into that need to be studied first. The contractor's means and methods to achieve the work then need to be evaluated to make sure that they're employing the proper methods. There's not only New York City noise code, but there's also historic preservation code here that we need to abide by. So there are considerable amounts, and I wanted to turn it over to Bob and Dorothy to go into greater detail about what we can do to help mitigate against these type of things. So.
Thank you, Joe. As part of our contracts, every contract that we put out, we put in guidelines for noise mitigation. We also have the DEP that we have to follow, the noise mitigation plan. We put in a rodent control plan that all contractors have to control rodents that may come due to the disturbing of the dirt. And we do put in a dust mitigation plan where they would set up monitors around the site to make sure that the dust levels did not get excessive. They would water the excavations down. They would make sure that at the end of the day, the sites were kept clean. They would clean the sites. So this way, by the end of the day, they would contain everything within their work area. So we have built a few of these over the lifetime, and we've addressed pretty much all the concerns that you may have: dust, noise, and rodents. We've definitely accounted for that in our specifications.
Well, Robert, you obviously know your job, and I don't have that job, but I can tell you that doing a job in an environment where it was extremely quiet is quite different than doing a job in the middle of 9th Avenue, which is very noisy. And it doesn't, the board send you a letter before you send your RFP to ask that there would be exceptional measure taken for that. And I'm not hearing anything to that effect.
The amount of construction equipment that would be on that site, depending on the contractor's means and methods, they would not be driving steel sheets into this ground. That creates a lot of noise. There's other mitigations that they can do to do it. We're doing secant piles where we're going to be drilling holes down into the ground, filling with concrete, reinforcing, minimizes the amount of noise that that happens on the job site. And then the only other thing that then, maybe some chopping for the street to rip the street up. If they encounter some rock, they may have to do some chopping of rock. But for the most part, I just see this project basically doing excavators, digging and hauling material out of the hole until we get down to the required depth. And then you would have construction debris, construction equipment coming in and out, A, to remove debris, and B, to bring in supplies and concrete.
And what you are describing, Robert, is a continuous noise. And
well, no, the work would only be, we have certain hours of work.
No, I'm not asking about the hours, obviously. What I'm saying is that you are telling me that during those hours, which is 7 to 7 or whatever it is, and you are giving me a litany of what the things are going to be that make noise. And
but a lot of these,
excuse me, Robert, let me finish. Sorry. Okay, we are in Hudson Yard. We've been living with noise and with construction for the last 10 years. So we are expert at that stuff, expert painfully, okay? I'm not hearing from you anything which is quantifying the noise, which is quantifying the length of the time of the noise, and which is quantifying anything special you're going to do in an environment which is like a garden, which is very, very quiet. So I am pretty disappointed with this answer. Let's go to the next one.
Well, just quickly, briefly, if I can summarize a bit, Christine, is that there will be baseline readings taken before any work gets going, not only for vibration, but for noise, for air quality. And we'll know what the baseline is there on any given day and how we are impacting it. And then we can take mitigation measures based on.
We don't know. We don't want you to know how you are impacting it. We know you are going to impact it. What we want you to do is to prepare for extreme protection of that.
No, understood.
And we have already said that 4 times. So I don't know what is it that is not clear in what I'm saying.
Right. And I think the only thing that we said was that we have investigated the cocoon aspect of things that you proposed from Hudson Yards, and that what Robert was getting to was that the implementation of a cocoon would be more disruptive to the area than the work is going to be itself because of the size. We would have to shut down that entire block. It would impact public space. It would impact the trees in order to employ that cocoon. It would be more disruptive than the work itself. That's all.
I doubt what you just said. I mean, it seems you seem to make it very extreme, and I'd love to have a sit down one-on-one and you show me the drawings of how it's going to impact everything.
I've done construction under the cocoon, which is basically a very large circus tent. Okay, with that tent, you require foundations and supports, which have to go further than the excavation that we're doing. So that would mean I would have to take up most, if not all, of that block and limit the traffic on that street. Number one. Number two is those cocoons also require some sort of a negative air and fan system that would have to be installed on them for flow of air through the work area to make sure that noise for worker safety, because you're going to have diesel equipment in that tent that has to be exhausted out. So now instead of getting bursts of diesel equipment from machines, now you're having a mass.
So we are going to have diesel equipment on the street as well.
Well, that's how we're going to dig the hole.
Okay. All right. Okay.
They have DEF on them. They have scrubbers on them, which limits the amount of diesel.
I think you have described very well how many days of noise are we going to have during the construction?
The amount of noise that you're going to have during the
construction. How many
period.
days of noise?
Well, the project is about 3 years. You'll probably have at various times, within the first year, you should have most of the heavy equipment out of there, where they should be starting to come out of the ground. Once the
Christine,
hole is,
we've indicated it's going to, of the 3 years of the project, 24 months of it are going to be at the
Right.
surface level. Of those 24 months at the surface level, approximately 9 months of that are going to be, your excavation and your sea camp piles and supportive excavation. So over the course of that 9 months, and again, this is not every day 24/7 work. This is just, this is going to be for 9 of that 24 months at street level is when we're going to have to get through the messiest bits and then work through it from there.
Okay. Carl,
Christine,
you still have-
yeah, I'm sorry. I had one more
Yeah.
question about how you're going to be, working with the greater Penn South community. If there is any type of community liaison from MTA
Yeah.
that will be part of the project, and will you be convening, regular
Yeah,
meetings
Carl.
to, yeah.
Sorry, Carl, I didn't mean to interrupt, but yes,
That's fine.
absolutely. And that's one of the things we've committed to early. Not only will we have a dedicated email address once the project gets up and running, for folks to reach out to us directly. They'll have Ernest's contact information, who, as Luke indicated, is the GCR, Government and Community Relations, boots on the ground there. You all have my contact information, who is the direct liaison to construction and development. But we're also committed to construction advisory committee meetings so that we can have a two-way dialogue, so that we're not just coming to you and telling you, hey, this is what's coming up in the next 6 weeks or 6 months, but hearing from you how things are going, what's working, what's not working, what needs to be modified, because there's more impacts than we may think. Something that we say, oh, we're underneath the noise threshold because that's what we're mandated to stay under by the city. You know what? Maybe that's still a nuisance noise that we need to look at in deeper, because even though it's underneath the threshold, it's a nuisance to the surrounding community. So it's a two-way dialogue, these committee meetings, and we're going to look to set up that committee. The board will be involved in that committee, that construction advisory committee as well, and we'll have representation as well as our elected partners and agency partners from DEP, DOT, sanitation, et cetera.
Okay, Gwen? No, you're still.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I got it. I just wanted to know the environmental assessment that you did for the state instead of the EIS for the feds, which I understand. Will we get can we get a look at that, or will that be on the website? And if
Yeah,
so,
that environmental due
said, Gwen.
diligence
They already
document is
said
what we'll
that.
share. Yeah, we'll share that with you.
Right. They already said that. It will be on the website. Okay.
yeah, but we don't know when, right?
No, it's going to be sometime this week or next week.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, correct.
Alan?
Thank you. Two quick questions. The contractors that you're vetting for this job, do they have a history of doing this particular type of work for the MTA in the city? Do they all have history with you?
Bob, I'm not privy to the shortlisted contractors for this job, but the vast majority, it's a relatively small family of folks who do this type of work. And I don't mean family literally, but I just mean the circle. So Bob, I don't know if you want to speak to the shortlisted folks and whether we've worked with all of these folks at some point or another over the course of your career.
we've gone through a vetting process of all the contractors that we have on the short list here. We have a history with all of them. They're all familiar with our specifications. They're all familiar with working on streets, city streets, where this job is proposed to do. Plus some of the, it is a low bid, so it's open to any bidder on the project. Let me correct you on that. I just had the brain for it, but it's a low bid project. So what happens is the bids come in, we vet the contractor, we go through the plan with them. They approach us how they plan on doing the work. If we're comfortable with them, they get the job. If we're not comfortable with them, we bounce them and we go to the number 2 person until we're comfortable to it. The bids are open publicly down at the headquarters, and we vet the contractors to make sure that they understand the work. I've been involved in projects where I've brought the contractor in 3 times till I felt comfortable. So I understand this, this area is very sensitive to you folks in this area. And, you will have our word that we'll go through and make sure we get the right guy for the right person for the job.
So you could wind up with somebody who's never done this particular type of work.
We could have somebody who throws a bid in for this particular type of work who has no or limited experience, but that would show up right away in the qualification hearing that we hold prior to award. So we would.
That would be one of the uncomfortable feelings you would have to bounce them.
I've done it before. I'm really not that uncomfortable with it. I'm not going to send a plumber in to do an electrician's job. It just doesn't make sense.
I'm not saying that. All right. The other question, a quick one: when these sites are finished, who monitors the sites? Is it MTA? Is it Department of Health? Who actually monitors the sites?
We have. I think this one has we have a consultant construction manager on this project. So we have our team that sits and monitors the project, is involved in the project on a daily basis. And we have an outside consulting firm that sits and monitors and tracks the work and works with the contractor to get the project.
He's talking about after.
And when it's all done, when you close it up, when you close up the gate and then walk away from it, I mean, who monitors it?
We have, so once the work is completed, we have our in-house forces, MTA, New York City Transit workforces for the power group. They will come to that location once a month, depending on the service requirements of the equipment. They will check the equipment, monitor the equipment, make sure everything is working, and then shut the hatch and come back the next time that they're needed. These sites are monitored. They also
they are monitored by MTA, right? That's what you're saying.
Yes, ma'am. We have cables to our central command center, and these sites are monitored 24/7.
Thank you.
Jesse.
Yeah, I think I would just like to, I think this sort of echoes Senator Hoylman's comment about, I still don't think we have a full understanding or full explanation on the degree to which you weigh the particularized concerns and risks for irreparable injury on your conclusion when selecting a best site. And so my question is, if this was a hospital that instead of Penn South, would you still be sitting in front of us and saying this is the best location?
Joe, you want to?
Well, I mean, that's a hypothetical question, but we haven't evaluated it against the criteria that we would evaluate it for a hospital. Obviously, there's other factors that need to be considered when you're talking about a hospital population. First and foremost is entry and egress. We're going to maintain entry and egress here too. So, I would have to go back and look. I can't tell you of the 230 substations that we have what the closest one to a hospital is, but I'd have to go back and look.
Viren.
Yeah, just a follow-up question. Have you done any kind of studies about health impacts of locating substations, in predominantly residential zones? Does MTA have any such study ever conducted, or was one conducted for this location?
Yes. So we do environmental due diligence, the environmental due diligence report, as I mentioned. And as I also mentioned, we have 230 substations around the rest of the city. So we are constantly monitoring, the environmental and noise and health impacts of those substations around the city. And as just a point of reference, the health organizations like the WHO who monitor these sort of things globally indicate that there are no known health effects from electromagnetic fields associated with substations. You're more likely to be exposed to electromagnetic fields in an industrialized city, especially one like New York, than you are from a substation that is at grade level, much less one that is at below grade level and further buffeted by not only the ground, but the box that is being constructed to be the building that houses the substation. Con Edison, in fact, has succeeded in limiting a magnetic field from their substations escaping to areas outside of the substation itself. And we're going to be working with Con Edison on this substation to employ the same means and methods to make sure that there's no health effects.
Okay, I think you partially answered my question. The second part that you didn't answer is, does MTA have a study of this nature? And if so, can that be shared with us? Or do you have a study particularly focused on health impact at this location?
At this particular location, there's no substation there now to study, but I would have to defer to our environmental group. But I know we certainly have noise studies from substations, and I would have to defer to our environmental group about EMF studies about existing substations.
Okay, so if you could share that information, that would be very helpful. Sorry.
We'll get the answer. Dale? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Okay, real quick. I just want to say, like, from the walkthrough that we all did in April to now, I understand the project a lot better, having, it's moved along and I have a clear understanding of it. I just had one question that didn't come up then and occurred to me during the presentation. When these underground substations are built, are there flood protection measures incorporated as part of the design? Do they
all of our we have since Superstorm Sandy, we've developed a design guideline 312, which addresses flooding, protection of facilities against flooding. So the federal guideline is 100-year plus 2 storm event. We protect our equipment to a category 2 plus 3 storm event, which is a much greater storm. So even though this facility is buried below ground with hardened walls, the hatches and the vent gratings up top will be protected against flooding. Okay. The only, when this is built, we check the flood maps to see where this is geographically on the island. Is it a high point? Is it a low point? So we kind of know where it is and what we have to design for. So the answer would be yes.
So the flood protection is effectively the box gets sealed up against any flooding?
The box is a reinforced poured concrete box with waterproofing around it. The only way, besides you have the conduits, the ducts coming into it, which are sealed from the Con Ed vault, then anything that goes out to the tracks would be sealed out to the tracks. And then the only other area that could flood for us is the street level if there's flooding, and the hatch and the gratings would be protected.
Got it. Thanks.
I have a few questions myself before we turn to the public. You mentioned that you have, I don't know whether it was 23 or 230 the station already installed, substation installed. How many of those are in residential neighborhood?
Do we have a breakdown of the 230 that are in residential neighborhoods? Obviously, we have significant number inside, but I just don't know the number off the top of my head. Does anybody?
I could get that number for you.
We can provide that
available.
Yeah, if you could get that to us, that would be really helpful.
Sure.
And I mean, how many complaints have you received per year from about the substation?
Yeah, we don't have any that I'm aware of. Certainly none from the one that we just built in 2021 in Maspeth that I mentioned and referenced. I would defer to Luke and the existing New York City transit system if they're, I mean, you deal with this on a day in and day out basis, and I personally don't receive any, but.
Correct. We don't have a consistent complaint about substations as something that comes up.
Okay.
I do want to also answer just a little bit about where substations are. I mean, they serve mass transit, they serve our subway lines. So they're going to be near our subway lines. And those are mixed neighborhoods. There's retail, there's residences, there's tall buildings, short buildings are all over the city, serving a variety of communities.
No, but I'm talking about residential as a zoning.
Mixed and residential areas. So similar conditions to the co-op area in Penn South. high apartment buildings and
No,
residences.
no, but you don't have to
as
give
well
me
as-
an enumeration of all the types of building in New York City. Just tell me.
We'll get you a breakdown, Christine. Yeah.
We'll get you a breakdown.
Okay, thank you. So how is this station, transit station, different from a Con Ed substation or a large residential complex substation? Is it different? Is it working differently? Is that a different size?
So unlike a Con Ed distribution substation, this steps the electricity down so that it's acceptable to the New York City transit system. Bob, you're a better expert than I as far as Penn South has their own substation. How does it differ from Penn South substation to, power their equipment?
Well, the substation, obviously the trains run on DC power, direct current power, which is 600 volts. The electricity in your apartment is AC current, so it has a different sine wave and it's stepped down to 15 amp. Right? But what happens is when Con Ed sends the power to our substation, the pictures that Joe had shown, they step it up from 400 amps to 600 volts, which then feeds the third rail power. Okay, so that substation basically is it's a big circuit breaker in your house that controls.
My question was, what's the difference between a Con Ed and a
Well, the Con Ed substation puts power out, generates power, and transmits it to the various buildings. We take that power, convert that power to what our needs are for the 600 volts. So they're generating the power. We're taking the end product of that power and adjusting it to meet our
So the
operating needs.
the substation of Con Ed is generating the power?
They have from the generating plant, they take it and they distribute it out. It's the same concept as us, but we're not generating the power. We're taking the power in.
All right. I got it. So tell me, what is the side of the station in square feet?
The new substation?
Yes.
Lucy, do you have that offhand? You're on mute.
Okay, now, so it's 110-foot long by 36
No,
wide.
I don't want a recipe. I want an answer.
36.
Okay, let me get the calculator.
Exactly.
110 by 36.
Okay,
So it's like 3,600 square feet.
4,000 square feet.
110.
4,000.
Yes.
So that's fairly small, is it? Right? Okay. And how deep are you going to dig?
40 feet.
40 feet. All right. And is that going to affect any buildings to the right and the left? Not.
No.
Right. Is it going to encroach on the green space?
No.
No.
Everything.
Okay. So I had a question about potential for fire and explosion. What are the potential for fire and explosion? People are talking about that, about substations. I mean, in the last 10 years or 20 years, how many fires and explosions have taken place in substations?
I don't know of any personally. I do know that during Superstorm Sandy, there was that incident over in Astoria Boulevard where the Con Ed transformers shorted out. They didn't blow up. They shorted out because of the salt water, because it was inundated with salt water.
So
as far as our systems concerned, I have not heard of any blowing up.
And explosion and
None.
fire. Any fire?
None that I am aware of.
Noise impact, once it's installed, I'm not talking about the construction, once it's installed, I've heard that there is, you were mentioning, there is sometimes a buzz coming out of that. What are you going to do about that?
There's no discernible, you would have to be laying on the grading of the substation. And even at that, we did a study of the MASPET station. You ask about studies, and we did a study of the one that just was recently built. And above the ambient noise, the distinction between the existing day in and day out noise that is generated by the city and when that substation is used, both with the fans, the exhaust fans on and off, was less than 3 decibel increase, which is imperceptible or thought to be imperceptible to the human ear.
Well, 3 decibels is a lot, right?
What's that?
But 3 decibel is a lot.
No, 3 decibel is not a lot. 3 decibel is
okay.
nothing.
All right.
Yeah.
So you think there is no noise when it's done?
No, there is not anticipated to be any noise impacts or
Because
mitigations necessary.
in the Astor substation, Con Ed is working, or you are working on diminishing the noise there.
Astor?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar, Bob. Are you familiar with any work there?
I'm not, is that the Con Ed substation? Because I don't think we have an Astor substation.
Yeah,
it's much-
but they're working on reducing the noise, so clearly there is noise.
Right, but there's a distinction, as we noted, Christine, between the power generation of a Con Ed substation
Right.
and the receipt of power based on our substation and step down.
All right, so let me ask next question. What is the length of gratings you are going to put on the sidewalk?
Lucy, do you have the size of the gratings that'll be needed?
It's, yeah, we have to just mention that we are actually bumping out the sidewalk. So the grading will be placed closer to the curb, and so we can keep the same width of the sidewalk for the pedestrians.
Okay, very good. All right, during construction, so you know my feeling about the noise mitigation. I'm not going to go further. Is there any way to reduce the length of the above ground and the 9 months work? And, you know, I'm not sure. I don't think, I'm hearing 6 days a week. I think it's scary. I mean, I don't think this is acceptable.
The majority of the work is going to be done during the week, Mondays to Fridays, right? And then on occasion, there may be a Saturday or two here and there if they want to, if they're running behind a schedule or they have an operation that's very time dependent and things like that. They may work a Saturday or two, and it will not be very noisy operations, okay? A lot of the work that we're doing here with the trucks and the equipment that's going to be there is not going to be anything more than ambient city street noise that you have there now. I've worked up in Harlem at various sites with heavy equipment, and I had no complaints up there. I was by housing projects. I had no complaints up there. I've worked at hospitals with heavy equipment. I've had
But
no.
you have never worked at Penn South. You're going to have
No, I have not, ma'am. No, ma'am.
You're going to have a zillion of complaints. So anyway, you know, there are some search there. Okay. Dust mitigation, is that in the contract to the RFP? You said yes. And
Yes.
rodent mitigation, that's part of that too?
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. And then 3 more questions for me. So you did an EBDA or whatever it's called. And then, I mean, have you applied for a BSA or the CPC permits? Because I understand that a transit substation needs a BSA approval when it is in a residential district where it's not supposed to be.
An underground substation, an entirely built underground substation requires that approval?
Yes.
We're not aware
familiar with that.
of that requirement at all.
Yeah.
This is going to be an underground substation. Additionally, as a state authority, I don't know the requirement.
It's a requirement. So we need to understand from city planning whether they are aware of this project and what.
But it's not going to be a constructed structure on top of the street in view of any pedestrians or buildings.
That's not the criteria. The criteria is that if you build a substation, it's supposed to be in a manufacturing environment. That's the criteria.
Well, that's not true, Christine, because we have, as we said, we have 230 of these all over the city, many of them in residential areas.
Nobody was paying attention, but we are.
But yeah, I'm going to have to take exception to the fact that this is an area where it's not supposed to be. Based on folks desire, sure, but we need to
No,
confirm.
based on zoning, I'm sorry. Zoning says it's supposed to be in manufacturing districts.
As possibly for above ground, but we'll double check and let you know.
Yes, very good. Okay, I'm going to open it to the public. I'm going to ask the public, first of all, to be polite and nice, and then vis-a-vis the MTA. And then second, if somebody has already said what you said, please do not repeat. And then you have 1 minute each to speak, and maybe Dale can help me clock that.
Sure.
Right. So Janine, do you want to bring the next 3 people?
Sure, I'm bringing over Ruth Connor, Amy Scarola, and Michael Ney.
Okay. I don't see anyone yet.
Ruth, are you with us, Ruth?
No, Amy is with us. So Amy, why don't you start?
Amy, are you with us?
Yeah, Amy is with us.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much.
Sure.
1 minute.
I'm unmuted, yes?
Yes.
Okay, I've been reading some of these studies. I'm sorry about the background noise. I live right on 8th Avenue. Some studies that say that people are supposed to be living further than 300 meters from a substation. And I live in building 9. And 4 years ago, when perfect timing with the ambulance. In building 9, I went out and measured today, and it's exactly 27 feet from the corner of my building to where 4 years ago they dug up to start the substation when there was a community outpouring, and Eric Botcher's work with the group was able to fight this. So I'm just wondering, like, we are really at risk being so close to this.
So a couple of things, Amy, and then I'll turn it over to the environmental team. But one, if that's the ambient noise level on a day in and day out basis, you're never going to hear this substation. But secondarily, what you saw, the digging that you saw for this was environmental, geological testing to confirm what the subsurface conditions are like underneath the sidewalk and the street there. That is not an indication of where the actual footprint of the substation was. We'd have to go out and confirm. But Lucy, correct me if I'm wrong, the closest point of the Penn South buildings, my understanding was, is more in the magnitude of 80 feet, but certainly not 40 feet from it. And then also, again, all of the studies that we have done, either our own research, when I say our own, the MTA collectively, our environmental team, there are no indications of health effects of being, proximate to a substation, much less a subsurface substation. Again, the studies that talk about, you are more at risk of being exposed to EMF just walking through Times Square than you are living close to a street level substation. This is going to be 50 feet below ground, encased in concrete and steel, and then covered in earth. So there should be no concerns about being proximate to this substation.
Thank you.
Do we have Ruth?
Ruth is not moved over yet.
No, she hasn't moved over. Next person was Michael Bornas-Ney.
Do we have Michael?
No.
Yes, hi.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah, hi. I just want to say thank you for the presentation. I mean, I think the core question we have is first of all, when you do an EDDA, instead of, let's say, an environmental impact statement or assessment statement, that already presumes that there's not going to be that much impact on the surrounding community. And when you're weighing the fiscal factors, you have to take into account, first of all, there are countervailing fiscal factors. For example, as Amber said, if there are businesses that can't function, those businesses can expect reimbursement from Penn South. Any of those costs should be taken into account by the MTA. But more importantly, the non-fiscal factors, I mean, those have to be really clearly weighed, the effect on all these children, elderly people, people with health challenges right there. And it doesn't sound, the assessment, whatever was done has not been made public yet, which seems a little strange to me. But in other words, some speakers said that a really clear social assessment has not been done, and that you can't decide what's best until that's done.
Thank you.
And I mean, what is the response to that?
Thank you.
Well, I think we got a response on that, which says did the ED something, and it's going to have a
environmental due diligence.
Yeah, and then they are going to have the social impact that, and as soon as it's published, we need to look into it. And
but Christine, this is already, they've decided already to go ahead.
We're going.
Sorry, Michael. We have to move on to the next speaker.
We're not going to do a back and forth here, right?
If I may, I think there might be a misunderstanding. We have done this environmental due diligence study is just as robust as if we were doing an EA, because we are following the regulations that are in place, which are the state regulations, SECRA, and the city regulation, SECR. So I think when you are going to see it and read it, you'll see that we did take a look at all these various categories and all these various issues that you have brought up. And once you read it, maybe we'll hear comments back from you.
Okay.
Please take a look.
And Robert, I need to move to the next person. I think.
Okay, I just want.
We got it. We got it.
No, it's on something different. To turn back for 1 second to the previous speaker, Penn South has their own substation. So our substation would really not be any more dangerous than the substation powering the building right now.
Amber, why don't you turn on, because you see
I got to tell you, he's insisted on this. We don't have our own substation. We provide our own power, but it is not comparable to what you're building. So you want to say that it is comparable to take responsibility off what you're building by saying that we already have one. We don't. And this is now not, I believe the second or third time you've mentioned it. You're trying to dig your heels in on an issue that isn't there. I'd like you to stop.
Well, this is the first time I've mentioned it, and I'm not trying to dig my heels into it, but thank you.
All right, so Bernard. Yeah, Bernard Block.
Bernard, are you here? Bernard, are you with us? Can you unmute?
Yeah, his hand is up.
Carol Turner is also on.
Where is he?
Harold?
Carol Turner.
Oh, Carol. Are you with us, Carol? Carol, are you with us? Who else is up? Janine?
I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me?
Yes. Bernard?
Yes, okay.
Oh, please go ahead, Bernard.
Right, I'm a Penn South resident and I'm in building 7A, and I have several concerns. Number one, a number of our residents park along the street that you're planning to excavate. You have indicated in your report that up to 38, if I'm not mistaken, for the first 2 years, parking spaces will be removed. Where are these people supposed to now park their car? There is no additional parking space in the community. That's A. And that includes people that work at the post office who commute in and park and use those parking spaces, which you'll now be removing. Number two, 28th Street is a major feed artery to 8th Avenue. By cutting down the amount of traffic that you will permit on the street during construction, you will cause a tremendous traffic backup, which creates noise above and beyond the construction noise of car horns honking and people being quite upset that they can't feed into 8th. Let me finish.
No, you have 1 minute. I'm sorry, Bernard.
But if you study 8th Avenue, you will see that there's already backup traffic starting at 3 o'clock.
We understand your points. Thank you so much. We're going to move on.
So yeah, just with regard to the parking, yeah, there will be parking impacts throughout the different phases. It starts out with the largest amount of impacts in the neighborhood of about 35 parking spots, I believe. That's subject to change as we go through, you know, our due diligence with the contractor once they're brought on board, and we see how to, you know, really sharpen our pencils and minimize the impacts here. But it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 parking spots. Those are just normal city street parking spots. Those are not Penn South parking spots, or that, you know, anybody is more entitled to than the next person. So unfortunately, there will be some impacts, temporary impacts, but that's, you know, that everybody would be fighting for those spots. And so to say that somebody from Penn South is either owed compensation because of a loss of parking spot, or
I don't think
needs to-
anybody.
No. What I'm saying is that
I
they
don't think
are.
anybody is saying that.
I never
So
said
I think
that.
you answered.
Right.
And
Okay.
then Bernard, your
Okay.
time is over. Okay, Bruce.
Before we go on to the next speaker, I will ask that all speakers please respect our time here.
Yes.
We don't want to be here past 10 o'clock or into 11 o'clock. And also, this is not a back and forth. You ask your questions and they are addressed. Who's next?
Next is Sylvia Syracuse and then Tira.
Sylvia, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you.
My concern is about additional terrorism risk. As you know, Penn South has already an unusual amount of terrorism risk, being near Penn Station and also on the 8th Avenue line with all the associated subway entrances. So have you considered that you're adding additional terrorism risk, as substations are an attractive target for disrupting transportation?
Thank you for the question, Sylvia.
Joe, you want to?
Bob, do you want to take?
You'll never even know the substation's there unless you know what you're looking for. Number one. Number two is the only thing, if they do hit the substation, which I don't, it's under a fortified concrete structure that, you know, is self-contained. I doubt this would be a terrorist target.
Bob,
we have high security on everything. Sorry.
Bob, have your substations been subject to terrorist attacks before?
Well, what I was just going to add was, and Bob and team, correct me if I'm wrong, this would amount to crippling the system. It would have an impact on our ability to run trains. It has no impact on anybody else.
Right. I was about to get to that.
But have they been targeted in the past?
None of ours that I'm aware of.
Okay, great. Thanks. Who's the next person?
Tira.
Kira, are you with us?
Hi, yes, my name is Tira. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
No disrespect to the MTA, Mr. O'Donnell. A question was asked if there was ever a substation fire, even within the last 10 years. And my research has shown me that there was absolutely fires in many substations, and maybe you're not aware of it, but in 2016 there was one, in 2014 and 2015 there's many stories of explosions in power stations that cause fires.
Are those
and
MTA
my question, pardon me?
Are those MTA substations?
Yes. Now, my question is, again, no disrespect, but Mr. O'Donnell, you did say that there are no known health effects based upon the WHO Environmental Committee. And my research has concluded that there are definitive health chronic effects from the WHO, and that they're listed online, and that there's not enough evidence to be able to conclude anything other than to tell people to stay away with prudent avoidance, and I quote, prudent avoidance from these electrical fields. And so I'm wondering, as you're vetting engineers to do designing, are you working with people that are using specialized shielding materials in the major power cables?
Thanks for your questions, Tira.
Couple things is, yeah, we would have, and I don't believe I answered the question about the fires in any substations, because I don't work in the existing system. I work for, you know, the construction of the new system. So I would have to get back to you on the number of fires and whether they were related to MTA substations or not, and whether they were subsurface or above ground substations, because again, there is a distinction. And then with regard to there are multiple medical studies, and I'm happy to compare notes with you anytime you like, that say, and you quoted yourself, that there is not enough data to make a clear conclusion on whether there are any health effects related to power substations, and certainly power substations of this nature. Transit-related substations have no known health effects related to them, and I'm happy to share the documentation with the board and with yourself.
We have
And
the next.
about the engineers, you said you mentioned your vetting engineer.
Again, this is not a back and forth. We're just going to
Okay.
move on to the next speaker.
Thank you.
And I will ask the subsequent speakers to please respect the format.
Next is Joanna Klemenko.
Joanna.
And Michael Niederman.
Joanna, are you here with us? Michael, are you here with us?
I'm
Hello?
here.
Michael, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Michael Niederman. I'm in Building 10 of Penn South. I've been here about 20 years. Question was asked and sort of discarded when talking about the human repercussions of the substation. I think I overheard someone say something to the effect of, no, there hasn't been a study of the actual demographic effects on 28th Street. Well, why not? This is an incredibly marginalized area between the seniors and the unhoused and just threatened population here. It is not your average block, demographically speaking. A lot of people have mobility issues. A lot of people have mental health issues. These are people within and outside. And I think it's a disservice to this community to not truly consider that instead of just giving lip service to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. The environmental due diligence report does take into consideration the demographic nature of the neighborhood. I think the distinction that was made was that it didn't take into consideration the distinction between residents of Penn South's complex, but it looks into several factors. And again, once you guys have, or folks have that document, please feel free to dive into it. And this is the beginning of a long dialogue with you all on this subject, and we're happy to answer any questions once you have a chance to take a look at that document and see what it does consider and does not consider. And then again, secondarily, once and not least importantly, once the construction is done and the substation is there are no impacts on, doesn't matter what the demographic makeup of Penn South complex is there are no health effects and there are no impacts related to a subsurface power substation.
Thank you. Who's the next speaker?
Johanna Klemenko.
Hi.
Hi,
Please,
yes. I'm an original tenant of the cooperator of Penn South, and I have huge concerns about the way that this has been presented to us. It's being presented to us as a fait accompli by the MTA, and disturbingly by the community board. It's not a fait accompli. I am working closely with the accessoride department of the MTA, and I have been in communication with the board of Penn South. There's nothing that is a fait accompli about this project, and it's unspeakable that it's being presented this way, and we need to roll back and discuss the fact that environmentally this is untenable for the first naturally occurring retirement community, and the environmental impact has not been addressed. You claim to first have had 23 and then 230 of these substations around the city. You know what the environmental impact is, and it needs to be addressed. You know very well what the—
Anna, your time is up. Do you have a specific question or just that comment?
Yes, no, my specific question is that the environmental impact in terms of breathing for air quality is really, really threatening.
Thank you.
What will you do about that?
So the
And,
question,
and
Joanna, we have to
You
move
got
on to
it.
the answer. Your time is up. Thank you.
Great, no,
Okay.
great question,
Dale,
Joanna.
hold on, Dale.
Sorry.
Joanna, you mentioned that the community board is presenting this as a fait accompli. I am not aware of that. And we are the community board. So please just let's dispel that notion.
It's not a constructive comment.
Can you hear me?
So
Yeah, hang on one second, Carol. I don't think
air quality.
Yeah, so relative to the air quality, it's a two-part question, if you don't mind, and because there's obviously air quality that's being considered relative to construction, and then air quality that's being considered relative to post-construction and the operational use of the subsurface substation. So during construction, I think Bob and some of our environmental team referenced the fact that there will be air monitoring in place. There will be several mitigation measures that are employed to make sure that there's dust and particulate are kept down and not being raised to an impactful level during construction. That's part of the contract documents that the contractor needs to comply with this. And again, should there be a case where we are within the allowable levels, but yet it's a nuisance, for some reason, that's what this construction advisory committee is designed to do and tackle, and we're happy to do that once we get into construction. Post-construction, once the substation is up and operational, there are zero air emissions, health effects related to air emissions from the substation.
Okay.
Thank you. Who's next up?
Carol, Shiama is next.
Carol, I see your hand. Are you live? Can you?
Yes, I'm a lot. I'm sorry that I couldn't adjust it so you could hear me before, but anyway.
We can hear you now.
The project will cause a lot of traffic interference. That can't be helped. They'll have to narrow the pathways. But if the street, 28th Street between 8th and 10th Avenue were completely closed to all traffic during the working hours, would it significantly shorten the duration of the project?
So the question is,
No, I got it, Dale.
Yeah,
Thanks.
okay.
I guess essentially it's moving the project for 9th to 10th Avenue on 28th Street. Yeah. But so two things is yes, there will be, it'd be necessary to close down one lane during construction. However, we are going to maintain one lane, if not two lanes at all times. We're going to maintain one at all times. There will never be a situation where West 28th Street is closed down between 8th and 9th Avenue, and then two lanes will be operational in the AM and PM peak hours and when there are no construction going on to help mitigate against some of that construction buildup, traffic buildup, if you will. And then secondarily, again, being able to be within 300 feet in close proximity to the existing system precludes us from going to 10th Avenue because it just is not to where we're talking about.
Maybe I misunderstood the question, but let me ask it. Let me ask it anyway.
Okay.
If you were able to close the block entirely, no traffic, would it expedite the process of construction?
No, because I still need to maintain a lane of traffic for emergency vehicles. So no matter what, I will not be able to close the street completely. So.
And it wouldn't impact your timeline.
No. We'll just give the contractor more staging area instead of being concise.
Okay, who's the next question?
Donna or
Shiama.
Me, yeah.
Donna, are you with us?
Can you hear me? I'm here.
Yes.
Can you hear me? So I attended the first presentation last week by the MTA. I really appreciated the thoroughness of their information. And there was a chat feature where I could ask a question. So I asked my question in the chat. And my question had to do with another element of our community, the Holy Apostles Soup Kitchen and Pantry program. Now that may sound like not much, but right on 9th Avenue and 28th Street, there is a church that serves over 1,000 people lunch 5 days a week, many of them unhoused, all of them needy, and also 3 afternoons a week. The same church offers a pantry bag to people who come who need food. So today I was walking across 28th Street towards 9th Avenue. I saw a line of people an hour before the pantry distribution began at 1 o'clock. They had already lined up halfway down the block. Many people had brought some type of a little chair. They were, many of them seniors. They need assistance. So my question in the last presentation in the chat was, has the MTA considered the effect on the Holy Apostles soup kitchen and pantry program? The answer I got was, well, we'll consider that. Well, I'm sorry, that's not good enough. If you haven't considered.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you there because we have your question. Thank you so much.
Thanks, I appreciate.
Yeah, the postal is on the sidewalk, which is across the street from the construction.
Yeah, and it's on the 9th Avenue side of the frontage of the church is on 9th Avenue. We do know that people queue up 28th Street towards the project. It is not anticipated to impact their ability to queue up and utilize that food pantry / soup kitchen.
And we would maintain that the contractor has to maintain access to the buildings along the sidewalk, where they're on the opposite side where they're walking. They have to follow DOT restrictions, rules and regulations of walkways, traffic, etc.
We got it. Who's the next? We're going to move on to the next question.
Jay is next.
Jay, are you with us, Jay? Yes, Jay, go right ahead.
I've got two questions. One question was already asked about the Holy Apostles. The other question is, now that I understand that the construction's going to be on the north side of 28th Street. The construction's going to be on the south side of 28th Street. Is that what I was just told?
No.
I'm sorry, north.
No.
You're right.
The substation's going to be located on the north side, yeah.
I got
this.
It's
going to be on the north side of 28th Street, which is where buildings 9 and 10 are. Both buildings 9 and 10, as are all Penn South buildings, they are built on the rubble of what were the previous buildings on the Penn South location. You are going to be constructing a 45-foot building underground. Can you tell us what is going to be the impact on digging such a structure on the foundation of the existing buildings that is built on such rubble? The second question I have is, can you tell us, is this new construction going to be built by union workers?
Okay, thank you for your two questions, Jay.
Okay, so as far as the construction of the substructure, after the street is stripped down and we get to subsurface, prior to digging the excavation out, a sheeting system, whether it be secant pile, shoring, timber lagging, whatever the method is by the contractor, would be installed around the perimeter of the footprint. Once that perimeter is installed, then the excavation will take place. So we're isolating everything else from within that excavation. Okay, and then that area would be supported by our subsurface shoring. 2, the project will be constructed using local law 220 and union labor. So yes.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Who is the next speaker?
Next is Cynthia Millman and Susan Immergut.
I see Susan's here. Susan, do you want to go ahead? Unmute. You'll need to unmute, Susan.
The map that the MTA shows the substation, but it doesn't tell you how the substation or what tunneling will have to be done under the substation to connect to the trains. What kind of tunnel is going to go between the substation and the trains to connect it? And also, there's no, it doesn't show on that map how far it is from each of the buildings, how far the substation is from the train station. It doesn't give the perimeter of the substation on top and the substation on bottom. So we need all that information, but I'm most seriously concerned about the connection between the substation and the train station. The
Okay.
train.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah.
How is that done? How big is
got it.
Yep.
Okay.
Lucy,
so-
Thank you so much.
Well, just
wanna do
quickly,
this, Lucy?
just real quickly, we're going to be sharing the presentation in full with the community board that we had prepared to present tonight, and that which we presented last at our last meeting with the Penn South community. And in that presentation, there's a detailed phasing plan that walks through exactly how we're going to connect to the existing system. And once that box is built for the substation itself, then it becomes a series of trenching operations to get to 8th Avenue and connect to the existing system. But go ahead, Lucy, if you wanted to jump in and talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, those are narrow excavations, narrow trenches, shallow trenches. So they will be opening, excavating, placing, constructing of the duct bank, and covering up. So that process will go very quickly.
So it's not a tunnel, it's a trench.
No,
it's a trench.
Shallow trench.
And how big is that trench?
Next, wait.
So we're going, it's not a back and forth. We're going on to the next.
Okay.
Is that Cynthia?
Okay.
Next to Cynthia.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. First of all, thank you to the community board for this excellent meeting. I'd like to ask two quick questions and then I'll let them answer. The first is, I really appreciate the question about the effect on our structures. And I'd like to know, has there been some sort of structural engineering study? And if not, why not? And my second question is, you keep talking about how you're going to be this very responsive, the MTA keeps talking about how they'll be this very responsive entity during construction. And I'm thinking back to last week's meeting where most of the questions were ignored. Just a few were answered that seemed to be the easier ones. You're ignoring our wishes about this station. And you misled us about your interactions with the Penn South board. And so I'm having a hard time believing that you would be responsive to us. I'm imagining that if there are issues, they would be glibly pushed aside and passed over. And I'd like to ask, convince me, how can you convince us that you will be responsive to us?
Well, I want to first say, I don't think it's fair to say that we misled anybody about our interactions with the board. As I pointed out in the timeline at the beginning of this presentation, we had discussed with them, with board leadership, with the board of directors themselves at a board meeting, the elected officials since December about this project. So when we say that we worked with them, it was to inform them of the project plan that we had. So I don't think that we went anywhere beyond that in that previous presentation. So I take issue with that comment that we were misleading.
My recollection was that
Again, this is not Cynthia. Cynthia, this is not a back and forth. You ask and answer. We get the answer.
Cynthia had
And
a
by the
couple
way,
other questions.
I was on a walkthrough with Amber present in April.
So Dale, just a couple other questions that Cynthia had, and Cynthia, forgive me if I'm paraphrasing, but you also wanted to know about the sheer volume of questions that were brought up during the meeting last week and whether they were addressed or not addressed. We did try to get to as many as we could within the time allotted. You know, a lot of them are redundant, a lot of them were commentary rather than questions, but all of them are being addressed and quantified. You know, I think Ernest mentioned, or Luke, when in the very beginning of this meeting, that a lot of them fit into several buckets relative to construction, health effects, noise, environmental impacts, things of that nature. So there is an entire FAQ that is going to answer all of those questions, and that is going to be part of that website that's being stood up. So we're not ducking from anything. We intend to answer all those questions. We just couldn't do it in the time that was allowed that evening, just like we may not get to everybody's questions tonight. And then I guess last, and specifically to your question about construction, we are, you know, part of that early discussion with Penn South's management team was to acquire as-built drawings to make sure that we had, you know, where their utilities were, what their foundation looked like. And we're going to be doing a pre-construction assessment of all of the buildings. You know, there's a pre-construction survey that goes into this to make sure that we know what the conditions are before we get there. And if there are any impacts related to what we're doing, we're going to stop what we're doing and address those impacts. And should there be impacts after the fact, then we'll go back and we will take responsibility for those impacts. So we do a very in-depth pre-construction assessment to make sure that we're not impacting, the buildings.
Joe, may I chime in just one thing? We were talking about preparing a website where we can share a lot of information, with you and others that are interested in our in our substation. But we have done this in the past quite successfully. All you have to do is maybe Google Mother Clara Hale Depot, where we very successfully collaborated with the community and the We Act organization, and we shared a lot of information as the demolition of that depot was ongoing and the construction through it. We even gave them, I think it was the first time where basically the community was at that time was wanted to see the result of our collaboration. So we do have successful collaboration, and I think this will be probably one too. I'm hoping, at least.
Can you repeat the Google search parameters that you gave? I didn't hear them quite well.
It's a bus depot in Harlem. It's Mother Clara Hale bus depot.
Mother Clara Hale.
Hale.
Lumi, if you have a link to the page, you can put it in the chat here.
Oh, I'll look it up.
I don't think we have a chat.
Oh, you don't have a chat function, sorry. Okay.
Who's the next question come from?
The next person is Anna Hess and then Michael Horaci.
And again, I'm going to ask the remaining speakers to please, if something's already been said, you could co-sign on it, but we're taking a lot of time. Anna.
Yes, I live on the first floor, 7B, facing 28th Street. I think that the environmental impacts will affect first 3 or 4 floors of all of these apartment buildings. I am extremely concerned and want to ask you a question about pregnant women and babies. There are a number of pregnant women and babies in this building, and I know that the electromagnetic fields does impact pregnancy, and I'm very concerned that you dismiss that factor because it is a NORC and there are many other environmental issues involved. But my question is, will you have environmental detection devices in the first and second and third floor apartments to determine about electromagnetic field interaction, noise, and air quality as this project takes place?
Thanks for your question, Anna.
And why not, if not?
Sorry, just unmuting. Relative to the EMF question again, it is a situation, or it's, we're not going to, I don't want to debate facts with somebody who has one study versus another substation study, but there is no health effects associated with subsurface substations, and that by all indications has to do with aged population, young population, pregnant population. If you have a cell phone, you are more at risk of being exposed to EMS from this substation.
Do we have another? Who's the next speaker?
Michael Horaci.
Michael, are you with us?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks. Really quick, I think it's easy to lose sight of how behind we are as a city. I guess I'm the only person to endorse this MTA project. I do not live in the area, but I am also not familiar with construction in the area. I live right across from Port Authority Bus Terminal. There's a new building being built right across the street from my house. Yeah, it's going to take away my view, my beautiful view, but I welcome my 500 plus neighbors to the area. When I heard about this project, I understand it's to improve service improvements. I would like to know what are the tangible service improvements, but I endorse this project and thank you for all that you do.
Thanks, Michael. So I think the tangible service improvements were covered in the presentation, but can we recap them real quick?
So the two main objectives of the project itself, and again, I defer to the project team, to add to this, but first and foremost, for present day service, it is going to provide a more reliable and quality source of power for reliable service to the existing 8th Avenue line. And then secondarily, because it's more of a forward-looking benefit is that it's going to allow us to reap the full benefits of CBTC by providing enough power to run more trains more closely together and more reliable service.
I'm going to call on more speakers as long as they have questions that have not yet been covered.
I
So
just
please.
wanted to add very quickly to what Joe said about the
sure.
benefits, about CBTC. Also, our systems are designed for redundancy. So if there is an issue with one substation, another picks it up so that there is no impact. Also, just being able to increase rideability because of the reduced headways and operability. So it's a whole system-wide improvement, although we're speaking specifically to this line, but this is a modernization. This is one aspect of modernization to our entire system relative to reliability and resiliency of the system and redundancy. Thank you.
Great. Who's the next speaker?
Lorraine.
Lorraine, do you have a question that hasn't been asked? Or a
Yes,
comment?
thank you. As Tara Bluestone pointed out, there have been fires at substations. And if you look at some engineering websites, they talk about mitigating fires and preventing fires because there is a chance of fire. In the event of fire explosion, I'd like to know what the MTA's detailed plans are for the evacuation of the large population of seniors at Penn South, many of whom use wheelchairs, walkers, and canes. These people would need to be personally evacuated one by one. Please let me know your detailed plans.
Thanks, Lorraine.
So Bob, I don't know if you want to tackle this one, but again, this is a subsurface substation. So any fire that would be related to this substation, if in fact there was one, would be below the ground.
A lot of looking through the web, there are a lot of manhole fires I've seen, and that Con Ed has those all the time where manholes catch on fire due to salt and snow and stuff like that. This would not, I mean, we have no evacuation plan for the building. The site is monitored 24/7. We know if there's a problem, it's maintained on a frequent basis. If there is a fire in it, again, it would be contained within the building, unless there was a Con Ed fire down in a manhole down and it happened to run its way down the conduits. That's not likely. It's usually an isolated spot. But that substation is below ground, and again, there's only one way in, and then there's some vents for ventilation. So any smoke that would come out of this, if there was a fire, would come through those vents and that door only. Again, it's equipped with fire alarm panels. So I don't think we don't have a plan. We would work with the FDNY if there was a fire.
Who's the next speaker?
Morris Benjamin.
Morris, are you with us?
Yep, I'm here.
Do you have a
good
question or a
evening.
comment that hasn't been asked or
Yes. I want to thank the community board and MTA for putting this together. You've heard enough arguments about why it should not be on West 28th Street. I'm going back to West 27th Street, where you say it's not doable. West 27th Street is a dead-end street. There's no traffic flow. The street is closed all day anyway. The parking on that street is faculty parking. You can move faculty parking to 28th Street. You talk about disruption of students. You don't understand that you're disrupting thousands of tenants who live here year-round. Students come and go. They live in the dorm, they go home on weekends, they're not there in the summer. So you're not really disrupting students, and they're only there for 2 to 4 years, and then they go. Most of our residents, buildings were built in '62. Some of us have been here for 60 years. I've been here for 40. So we're here to stay. So the question is,
we addressed this in the presentation, Joe, if you wanted to rehash it, but it wasn't just about the students. There's proximity.
Also,
it's not a back.
It's done. It's done.
Yeah, just I guess first and foremost, thank you, Morris. But so yeah, it's about being able to maintain emergency entrance and egress to the facilities more than it is the disruption, like a headache to the students. And you point out that they're only there for 2 to 4 years. Well, this project's going to be gone in 2 to 4 years, so it's not going to be bothering anybody for more than that. So, and the fact of the matter is we're talking about proximity to any building, whether it's student, whether it's commercial, whether it's residential. The closest building to this substation is more than 80 feet away, and we just don't have that width on West 27th Street in order to be able to construct what we need to construct and maintain the access, entrance and egress to these structures, whether they're the student structures, the student residence, the faculty buildings, and on the south side of the street, there's a bunch of commercial buildings. So,
thank you.
Who's the next speaker?
Anna.
Maureen.
Maureen, do you have a question or a comment that hasn't been made or asked?
I believe I do.
Okay.
I'm a resident of Penn South, and I live on 8th Avenue. And something that I'm very concerned about here is timing, because it seems like, like if you look on 8th Avenue, downtown, we have a building under construction now. Across the street from me, there's a building going to be started very soon, and then your project, and then the Penn Station thing, and I feel like everything is being dumped here, where I just happen to have bought property or bought into property, and it just seems really unfair to me that all this is all being dumped at the same time, even, and it's not all the MTA. I understand that, but it's still. It rubs me really wrong, and I'm not an expert on anything. I just live here,
So your comment is on the concentration of various construction projects in the area.
Right.
I don't think we have an answer on that.
Well, so yeah, I mean, we certainly don't control the other construction going on in the areas, but one of the things in our early conversations with Penn South's, facilities management is to ensure that there's close coordination and choreography between our projects and theirs to make sure that there are no impacts. And in fact, one would consider the fact that if they're already doing construction and we're doing construction at the same time, then we both get in and out of there rather than piggybacking out one after the other, so this way here we rip the Band-Aid off, get both constructions done, and we're both out of there.
I wanted to add something. I just wanted to add something while we have everybody here, Christine, about the construction timing. Is that we have
we still have 7 people. I mean,
we still have 7 hands up, and I would implore the remaining speakers to focus on what has not been said, comments that have not been made, questions that have not been asked, because otherwise all of us are going to be here all night, and we have other agenda items tonight.
The last point I want to add, though, about the construction timing and the overlap of all this work is that we've been trying to get into this area to do this critical work for 4 years. So construction duration would have passed if we had started around.
Okay, look, we got it.
I could say, I'd like to just jump in one thing.
No, Robert.
We're going to move on.
Go ahead.
We have to move on.
Who's the next speaker?
Anna.
Anna, do you have a question or
I
a comment?
I live in building 7B, apartment 1B, so I will be directly the apartment above the construction site. This question had been asked, however, you did not respond. Will there be internal environmental detectors be put into my apartment, the 2 apartments next to me, and the 3 floors above me that are directly over the site?
Okay, thank you for that question.
I defer to the environmental team, but again, the fact of the matter is that this construction site will be at least 80 feet away from the closest building. So in terms of, we are going to do post-construction monitoring to set baselines for what the existing conditions are, and then we will monitor over the course of it for vibration, for noise, for dust, for air quality. That will go on. But in terms of putting stuff inside folks' residences, there are no residences within 80 feet of this construction site.
Well, Joe, I have to take exception to your answer because, if you have noise, 80 feet is nothing. So, and when they are talking about environment, they are including noise. So,
right.
having a noise
I think we're
detector.
required by code, and Lucy or Lumi, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we have to monitor from at least 50 feet from the site. And then we make deductions, and there's formulas based on that. If, readings are within limits within 50 feet of the site, then we don't need to go to 80 if they're within limits at 50.
Okay, just in our neighborhood, when we have a lot of noise issues, so we are a little bit of an expert on that.
No, absolutely. And I think that's part of the dialogue that we will have as part of, okay.
Let me finish. It is very frequent that we ask contractors to put, to measure the sound from the inside of the apartment. So that's something that is common in our neighborhood, and we have done that many, many times.
So certainly,
I think so when we do have complaints from someone that says that they are hearing something, we do have that opportunity to come and check. However, it should be understood that the code, the New York City noise code basically has certain requirements, and this 50 feet distance is so we don't impact your our neighbors and our the communities where we work. And should be an understanding that basically there is a background noise that you have at this moment, and then basically we would be monitoring so we don't go over the limits that are set in the New York City noise code.
I mean, again,
or over the background.
We understand that very well.
Okay.
And I want to point you out one more time, just in case you have not walked around the Penn South, that it's exceptionally quiet.
Yes, it's very beautiful. You're absolutely
whenever you say there is a background established in the city code, that may not be applicable to this area. And
two things, Christine, just to be clear, two things is we would take readings at Penn South to make sure that we are not exceeding the ambient levels or not going above the thresholds allowed above the ambient levels there at Penn South, not in East Harlem, not in Greenwich Village, not anywhere else in the city. We are going to set baselines for what the day in and day out noise is there to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples. And then secondarily, all I was going to say before was that is exactly the purpose of the Construction Advisory Committee. Because again, despite the fact that we were required to, comply with these noise ordinances and codes, there may be noise that's deemed to be nuisance by the residents of Penn South, for whatever reason. They're more sensitive receptors. They're, it's an aged population.
I got it, Joe. I got it.
So we will react to them based on that dialogue and that conversation, and we can adjust our means and methods.
Got it.
Who's the next speaker, Janine?
Michael Gormley.
Michael, do you have a question or a comment that has not been made or asked?
Yes, I do. Hello, my name is Michael Gormley. I'm a Penn South carpenter. I'm in building 7A. I actually have two quick questions. One is Mr. O'Donnell has responded to a lot of the inquiries about noise, environmental concerns, electromagnetic fields by resorting to a statement about, well, this is an underground substation rather than an above ground substation. That's been his go-to reply to debunk any of our concerns. So I'd like to know, do we have any specific research that's been done beyond the one you gave during your earlier presentation? There's actually manufacturers sort of research on all this stuff. It was actually their own plant. And the second is, the question was asked earlier, it's being presented as a fait accompli. Is this in fact a fait accompli? And are we just being nice to each other here?
So I think, Dale, out of deference to the rest of the folks who have original questions, these have already been answered. So I guess we're just going to move on from those. But I do like the way that Christine says fait accompli. I don't think anybody says it better than her. So
we do not assume this is a fait accompli. We are a community board. I personally take issue with that because that's the nature of our work here. Can we go on to the next speaker or questioner who has a question or a comment that has not yet been made, not to reiterate points that have already been made and you don't like the answer that you're getting? It's almost 9 o'clock and we have more items on our agenda tonight. And we are all your neighbors and we are all volunteers here. So please respect our time.
Linda and Mark are next.
Linda. Linda, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
My question has to do with siting. 31st Street and 8th Avenue has a large parking lot. Why was that considered?
Okay.
So that goes back, yes, and unfortunately, it's another somewhat duplicative question. We talked about 31st and proximity to the Penn redevelopment that's going on there. It was considered. It was sort of narrowed down into the 4 or so sites that could have possibly been viable, but further investigation and digging, unfortunate pun intended, was that it would not achieve the objectives of the project by being able, it's not a large enough footprint to increase the power to a sufficient level to achieve the objectives of the project. All the other complications be damned, it's not going to accomplish, it would be senseless to do it there because it doesn't achieve the project's objectives.
I want to ask a corollary question that came into me via text. Is it possible to achieve your goals with 2 smaller substations rather than 1?
Bob or the design team, I defer to you guys on that.
I'm going to defer to Lucy. I don't think so, because the equipment that's in, we're taking 1 feed from Con Edison to power the tracks into the equipment that's there because if you saw in the picture that Joseph gave, we have a substation in the north, a substation in Canal Street and the south, and we're right in the middle. So there's a redundancy there. So it's the size of the equipment that has to go into the room, right? It's not, we're not putting in, laptop units or, small units. These are massive pieces of equipment that get craned in and rigged in. So a lot of the room depends on the size of the equipment. So I can't get small equipment to do the same work that the 600 volt equipment that's there that we're putting in will do. So that's,
okay, I'm going to take that.
It's governed by the size of the equipment. It's governed by the size.
Short answer is no, it's not feasible. Okay. Who
right.
has
Sorry.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Who is the next speaker?
Mark.
Mark, are you with us?
I am. Hi, I'm in building 9 on a low floor. So thanks everyone for doing this and for your answers and your work and your, your attempt to, address what we're looking for here. I have 2 questions. One is kind of a common sense question. I know we've had a lot of studies and a lot of, like somebody just said, manufacturers possibly issuing these findings and so on. I'm just wondering, I just looked it up, and a single subway car weighs 42 tons, okay? 42 tons. And we know how many cars there are in a subway. And you have to have your station 300 feet away to pump the electricity in there and everything. And I understand people are thrilled to have this, improvement in service to the MTA. Just from my first question is just from a practical sort of common sense point of view. If you're going to push just one 42-ton car down the subway tracks, do you really think it's possible that there's going to be absolutely no effect on, say, human tissue or something after this subway is created and it's underground, safely protected? There's no effects. You won't be surprised if they someday find out, oh, well, we found out that huge amounts of electricity near human beings is harmful. Could somebody just address that?
I think we already touched on that answer 2 or 3 times. So let's go to the next one.
Okay. Well, I want to just note there's studies in Europe that are a little different from the ones here. And I just would I would ask you to just please, since it is a residential neighborhood, to just look a little bit extra into that. And the other thing is about the 31st Street site and just Penn Station in general. I just feel like that's your best bet for doing this. I don't think it's a fait accompli. And I'd love for you to look at 31. And I'd like for you to, I saw when you were telling why it couldn't be at FIT and why it couldn't be on 27th Street, a fairly detailed plan, whereas the 31st Street plan just had a little map and it wasn't like completely explained why that wasn't a great site. So I would love to see like a site-by-site comparison with this site and the Penn Station site and like how they compare in all these different, categories of,
Okay.
what
I
are the
think-
advantages and the disadvantages? And if I was wondering if you could provide that to us.
I think we have the gist of your request. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, obviously, as I mentioned before, I know I speak fast.
We'll take care of that. I mean, you have to give us some information. We'll
Yep.
ask the information.
Who's the next speaker?
Matthew.
Matthew, do you have a question or a comment that hasn't been heard?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I'm the treasurer of Penn South. I'm a former president of Penn South, board member for 30 years. I'll go on record that the community hates this freaking project. And my sense is that there's been not a lot of transparency with the information that flows. My question goes back to a former cooperator question, Jay Schaffner. He asked the question about the integrity or the impact on the buildings around the area that's going to be worked on. They talked about putting up shoring. And is there a study, is my question, I get it, Dale, thank you. Is there a study that actually addresses the impact on our buildings, the structural integrity? We sit on piles of rubble, and I don't know that we have seen that, and I'm concerned we have not seen that.
I'm quite sure I've heard the question and the answer to that question already, so I'm going to move on.
I didn't know. No, the question is do we get to see the study? I heard the question that the answer to Joseph.
Do we get to see the study? Okay.
Do we get to see the study? And I feel like we don't get to see the study. That gives us a bad taste in our mouth in this community.
Sorry.
Joe,
again,
if I may, I believe in the environmental due diligence, we do talk about the vibration impacts during construction. And you can see some levels there that we looked at and for the various potential construction methods. We did not do a study for this particular building to say, but I can say that we do include in our contract documents vibration limits, and there is a vibration monitoring plan in place that the contractor has to implement, so we do not damage anything that is around us.
We'll have that next week. We'll have that next week.
Matthew, that's
two things is
next
just
week.
Dale, just real quickly.
No. That's I think we got it.
No, I don't think you do though, Christine. Hang on a second, because there's two things. First and foremost, we need to address the transparency thing. We've been out here for this on a year now on multiple occasions talking about this project with the Penn South management team and the facilities manager specifically for these reasons, specifically because we want to understand what the conditions are that we're going to have to deal with in order to make sure that we maintain the integrity of your building. So not only are we working with them to get the as-built drawings, but we're going to do a pre-construction survey of the existing conditions around your building. If you would like to see the results of that existing condition survey, and if Amber, if you would like to, ask us once we do that survey for the results of that survey,
I'm asking you now. I'd like to see them myself.
Okay.
Okay.
Full transparency.
So the question's been asked and answered. Okay. Are there any more?
There are three people that I see in the line: Connie Sullivan, Kim Oliver, and Bernard Block. Do you see that?
Bernard already spoke. Connie, are you with us?
Well, Robert is next. Connie and Kim are not accepting to be moved over.
Okay, Robert, are you with us?
Yes, I am with you. Just a quick question. I know there is an abandoned power plant just south of Penn Station. It's part of the original Penn Station building. I would just want to know if that was considered as a site. If not, why not? And if it was considered as a site, why was it rejected?
Do we know?
I think that building is on 31st Street, south of Penn Station.
Yes, it was part of the original Penn Station. It's the only part of the original station that was not torn down.
Right.
And that was the power supply.
And that was the power supply for the original Penn Station.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
That's an interesting. Okay.
It's an historic building, and it is specifically designed to power tracks.
Great, thank you, Robert. We'll take a look at that and find out whether that was evaluated as part of the 31st Street study.
Okay.
Okay, that was an interesting question. All right, do we have any more questions from the public?
Kim Oliver was moved over.
I'm sorry, what's the name?
Kim Oliver.
Kim, are you with us? Kim?
I'm here.
Hi, Kim. What's your question or comment?
Well, this is a rather odd comment, but as an American, I have this question. Isn't it odd that as a democratic country, we have people who work for us, who we elect, who continually ignore our wishes? We do not want this at Penn South. We have made that eminently clear. And yet, you seem to think it's a fait accompli. We don't.
Oh, the fait accompli. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you for your comment.
All right, Dale, thank you so much for the help. This is amazing, amazing job. So, I think what we are going to do is take an extensive notes of all the questions and put them in writing and ask the MTA to respond to all of them. And indeed note that the management of Penn is very much opposed to that, as well as the elected official, and encourage the MTA to look at options, and at a minimum, respond to all of our questions as far as transparency goes. I think I want to thank the MTA. They have been very gracious tonight, and they have really responded in as extensively as they could, I think, and I think it was a good exchange. I would recommend that you don't take it as a fait accompli. I mean, we should really explore any other option that they are out there, because that's what the community wants, and get back. At the same time, we do want to have more electrical substation to support, improvement to the subway. So it's a very difficult project and a very difficult situation. Do I have the support of Brett?
Yeah, just one more thing, Christine, if we think it's worth putting in there. We've had some questions about some alternate sites, and it was explained to us in the presentation that many other options were looked at but were dismissed, and that's why they're back at this one. Could we also request the studies that demonstrate that yes, indeed, this is the one and only best way that they can do it, so we can have that available as well?
Yeah, we'll ask all of that. So we'll ask all the information.
We have seen those, by the way, Brett.
Right.
We have seen those, by the way, and we're happy to share them with the committee at large.
That would be fantastic.
So if I could have a resolution for that, for writing that letter, and as usual, we will send it around to all of you so you can, fix, correct, and add. Oh, Dana, you have a question.
Can you unmute?
Sorry, I'm just having some issues. It's not a question, just one thing that really I don't think came through clear through the questions and answers and full transparency is that, and it was something that came up in the last meeting. So I just want to make sure, even though we didn't have a specific question, that we are, we did take bids. And we are in the process of qualifying that bidder, and we do anticipate, we have not seen any issues, and we do anticipate awarding to that bidder within the next month or so. So I just wanted to mention that.
That's the version of fait accompli, right? Yes.
Transparency, that's what
right. Transparency and fait accompli. So we will document all that stuff and pass it on. And so do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Okay, second. All in favor? Thank you. So I want to thank the public and all the people, the 133 participants which are still connected. I hope you have a better understanding of what's going on. I'm sure, I don't know whether you are more comfortable or not, but that's what's going on. I want to thank the speakers, which were also very well behaved. And Amber, thank you so much for your introduction. And thank you to the MTA and the MTA members. I mean, that's not necessarily easy to deal with us, but we are the community, and we are exercising our privilege of being the community. But thank you so much for all the answers, and we look forward to get a lot of the answers, lot of the question answered. Thank you so much.
Thank you all, and agree. We don't always agree, but I respect the discourse. So thank you very much.
Very, very well said.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Luke.
Thank you.
Joe,
Thank you.
and
Thank
everyone else on the team. We really appreciate that.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you for hosting.
Christine, just for my records, is there anybody who's P&E or abstaining or opposed?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So the good news as far as so we have two people of the MTA, they want to stay the whole night. That's okay. Just
trying to leave.
Oh
okay,
my.
so the good news is that we have postponed or deferred the presentation on the open street, and we have postponed or deferred the presentation on the bus stop. And the reason for that is that the bus stop is exactly in the same space as was the, what is it called? The Bolt bus stop. So it was already a bus stop. It was already used by a very large company, and it's going to be used by a much smaller company with much less, impact. And we just asked them to confirm that they will leave the 8 feet and they will install the stanchions. So we are sure to have the 8 feet. And if this is okay, we'll put that as a new business for the full board, okay? And so the only thing I think is left there is the budget. I have to say, I'm not so excited about working on the budget right now. So I don't know how we can do that. Have you all looked at the document, and is there anything that, let me go around the room and tell me, is there anything that you think is very, very important that we put in the budget?
Yeah, what's our priorities?
Right, what's in your mind, the thing that we should definitely put in, and it has to be something on which we did a letter, right? So you saw all the letters. Yes, Viren.
Very quick, and I'm going to confess that I haven't had a chance to look through the document, so you might have already addressed it, but at the same time, I feel like asking the question regardless. Can we ask for money to do a sort of more comprehensive study for open streets in our district? And when I say more comprehensive, it's because we have a few open streets and they've sort of come about, without right. And I think it really calls for making it much more equitable and or at least open up a conversation.
Okay, that's not a bad idea. I mean, you know that the priorities of the DOT now are to create open street in front of schools. And in fact, there is one, Charles, you may be able to talk about that, right?
Yeah. There are some members of the PTA at Midtown West who are hoping to get a open school street in front of a Midtown West on 47th Street. I know they're speaking with the principal soon and coordinating that. But and they've talked with the 47th Street Block Association, and they're supportive of it. So there may be some budget that could be allocated towards staffing of that. I'm not sure, who sets out the barriers every day, or if that's up to the PTA to do that, or the school to do that, but perhaps there could be some budget allocated towards making that a school street.
Yeah. I don't know that a study, Viren, I don't know that a study, what would be the purpose of the study? I mean, it needs to be very specific to
Yes.
our district,
Yes.
right?
Yes, and the first thought I have is that let's have a kind of, let's make a map of our wish list. And then we sort of discuss that and we sort of distill it down to sort of good candidates. So,
but then we can do that. We can do that ourselves. We don't need the DOT nor any money to do that.
No, we can, but we might not be able to because you need certain type of data that certain states may not qualify for open streets based on a whole bunch of other sort of criteria, right?
All right, so let me
please FDNY, whatever have you. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things. And my hope was, Christine and Dell, to kind of open up the conversation about mapping this, not only just for the open streets, but partially sanitation, the parking lane, and the toilet study. So kind of really have, that's what I meant when I say comprehensive.
Okay, so why don't you write a little paragraph about that so we can put that in the budget.
I will be happy to do that. And Christine, one other sort of avenue that might be open to us is potentially ask for an FCNY fellow.
A what?
A fellow.
The FCNY fellow. You know, the fellowship community board gets allotted.
Yeah, I think that would be a better avenue than the budget. I mean, asking for a budget, that would be a good idea.
Yeah, okay, okay.
Right.
I like that approach with a fellow for open streets. I think if we were going to ask for a budget item, it would be like almost like take Charlie's school street block and use it as a pilot.
Yeah,
for like
that's what I'm.
The most excellent.
Yeah, but the point is that Dale, we don't have. I mean, Dale and everybody, we don't have a resolution yet about that street. So we need to have resolution we have done and take them and put them in the budget. So maybe that's for next year. You know. Yeah, Alan.
Thank you. I don't know if this qualifies as a budget item, but you had a presentation back in January, wrote a letter in support of the city bike infill stations in Chelsea, Hudson Yards, and Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah.
Would that qualify as a budget item to advocate for, or is that on its way? Is that something that
it's on its way?
It's on its way. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I just had another question. What was that in the Dropbox? The multicolored I don't know how to call it slide. What was that?
Oh, that was like where our work has been focused in Hell's Kitchen and Chelsea.
Cool. That was terrific.
Yeah.
Did you make that up? Did you make that up or?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
we
excellent.
Did. So
really
if you can read through it, if you can read through it next month, maybe we can walk through it. But the idea was to say, this is everything we have done in the last 15 years, and let's go from there, right? Because give you a sense, and we did the Chelsea / Hell's Kitchen just for you, Alan.
You stuck Chelsea in there. I noticed that. Thank you very much.
Make sure we weren't privileging.
I don't see Chelsea mentioned too much in the documents and anything, but maybe we'll change that.
This one shows everything which was done in Chelsea and Hell's Kitchen. So David,
there's too much to be done in Hell's Kitchen.
So where are we? When you say get the budget, I didn't receive an email on what the budget priorities are. Maybe I missed it. I'm a little confused. You say
in the Dropbox.
I was in the Dropbox. I couldn't find that. I found
there is a spreadsheet which shows that.
I didn't.
David, I'm gonna resend you the link right now.
Right. I think what we can do is work on it and then send you what Dale and I think are the priorities, and then you can comment on it if this is easier. Okay? Because it's a lot to absorb. unless one of you wants to do that and start to, help. And Charles, you still have your hand up?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to quickly talk about the City Bike Info Station and give the good news that 63 City Bike docks were installed on 47th Street and 9th Avenue, I believe today,
Wow.
right on the school street that we're hoping to get, and right in front of Ramon and Ponte Park. And it's beautiful, and I'm very excited about it. Hopefully there's more to come. I'm not sure.
Wow. Wow. I got a huge station on my street, which is like across town. And then they removed it immediately because there is construction, and the construction is taking over the whole street. So that's, I hope it's going to come back. Well, I encourage you to read the documents that were shared with you. There is one document, which is the what happened last year at the budget, right? And the response of the agencies. There is a document which is the history of what we have been doing for the last 15 years and give you a sense of where things are. And then there is a document which has a list of links on the letters we wrote this year. And I think it would be important that you look at this list of links and say, okay, this thing I really want to see in the budget or not. Some of the things are kind of, casual. We don't need to put in the budget, but some of them are important. And then we'll get back to you, Dale, and I will get back to you to collect your feedback. Okay? I know we are all dazed after this meeting. This is exhausting, right? It's like, it's hard to go to the next subject. I totally understand that. Okay, that's all I have. Anybody else? Colleen, do you have any word to the wise?
No, I think all is good. I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit and thank you for responding to all my questions about open restaurants. So we just got another one where you said, I got the 311 response saying they have to remove everything immediately. So when do we go back to those people and pull it out?
So we've created a list of all the locations that we confirmed that are abandoned or that we've gotten complaints that we're going to assign for reinspection. So we will do another reinspection and we'll go out there and we'll keep you posted. We'll let you know what the next what the
Okay.
action plan is.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Brett?
Yeah, since we have Colleen's attention and since I was asking about it last week, is there anything we can hear about that corner at 29th and 8th Avenue with that sidewalk?
Yeah, has Jesse reached out to you, Colleen? We have
I believe he did this afternoon, and he sent some photos. Is this
Yes.
the one where there are barricades there?
So
no, the barricades are not there anymore, by the way.
Yeah, those were taken down. Those were there in July. I think they were since taken down. But that issue with the sidewalk has been there for more than 2 decades. And the joke I keep making about it is I'm worried about the Landmarks Commission coming in and designating that as a historic landmark.
I think we need your help, Colleen, on filing with the owner of the building. Because
Okay.
the sidewalk is like a massive pool.
Brett,
And
what's the street address directly in front of it? Of the
9 and 9.
Yeah, I can't get the address. It's right at
No,
the
it's
corner.
29 and 9. Yeah.
No, 8th Avenue.
I'm sorry, on 8th. Right.
Oh, it's 29th and 8th Avenue?
Yeah, the northwest corner.
Okay.
At one point you mentioned there was a construction. There's no construction there now, as far as I can tell. So it's just.
And I want to say that I have positive things to report. There are DOT obviously is rebuilding all the corners on 9th Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
The ramps and the corners. So they are coming down and redoing systematically all the corners, which is pretty cool.
Brett, I'll look into that. I'll see if we issued a violation.
Okay.
I think the street address is 385 8th Avenue.
Right. There's like that sidewalk averages about more than 1311 call per month. And everyone says that the owner was notified and the case is closed, and it's just pretty regular.
Well, I mean, the story behind that is that the property owner is responsible for the repairs and maintenance of their sidewalk.
Yeah, but after 75 days, Colleen, you guys can take over, right?
If it's a commercial property, we can't take over. If it's residential, we will go in there and fix it.
Oh,
I think it's in our zone.
Yeah, but it's a hotel.
No, it's okay.
It's a residence anyway. And another piece of good news is that the 30. You remember we got the presentation about 33rd to 33rd or 34 to 30 being repaired on 9th Avenue, and they are already starting to work on that. So we're going to have another segment of 9th Avenue where the sidewalk is much wider. Even though, you know, the construction is messy and disorganized.
That's 385 8th Avenue, and that's the pond in front of it. So that's the address. So it's a residential building with a commercial first floor. Sorry.
Yeah, and in cases like that, Brett, it's the property owner who would be responsible because it's commercial. What would happen is that if they don't fix it, the DOT will issue, there will be a lien that would be placed on the property. And
but that doesn't fix the sidewalk, you know.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And it has literally been an issue since I've been in the neighborhood since 2000, and it's been like that since I've been in the neighborhood. So I don't know how long.
You're just waking up now. We could have started to work on it.
I brought this up before, and you know, it's not a new thing.
Let me check if you issued a violation. I'll get back to you.
All right. So if you're all okay, I want to adjourn. Are we all okay with that? Thank you so much, guys.
Night, everyone.
That was a big one. Thank you, Dale.
Okay, that was fun.
Wow.
Good night.
Good job, Dale.
Thanks.
Good night.